Good evening, everyone. Today is October 19th, 2020. The special town meeting of the town of Stoughton is now called to order. This town meeting is being held via remote platform Zoom webinar due to a public health concern arising from the COVID-19 pandemic. The meeting is also being broadcast live through the Stoughton Media Access Corporation and also being streamed at their website, and is being recorded for future broadcasting. I would ask everybody, if you are able, to please stand and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance to our national flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And let me just take a moment and read this. Over this year, the town has lost several beloved members of our community who have served our town in numerous ways. Stoughton is a better place because of their service. Please join me for a moment of silence for those we have lost. May they all rest in peace. Next, I would like to introduce our panel guests. We have Congressman Stephen Lynch. Thank you, Congressman, for joining us this evening. I will come back to you after I finish introducing our panelists, Congressman. I'd like to start off with the school committee. Sandra Gropey, Chairwoman, Stoughton School Committee. Katie Pina-Nokian, Vice Chair, Stoughton School Committee. Dr. John Marcus, Superintendent, Stoughton Public Schools. Christine Howe, Chairwoman, Select Board. Stephen Cavey, Chairwoman, Select Board. Stephen Cavey, Vice Chair. I didn't mean to promote you, Steve. Vice Chair, Select Board. Deborah Roberts, member of the Select Board. Joseph McCrisky, member of the Select Board. Robert O'Regan, member of the Select Board. Dr. Robin Grimm, Town Manager. Stephanie Carrara, Interim Town Clerk. Ed Trumfield, Chair, Finance Committee. Bob Desmond, Vice Chair, Finance Committee. Bill Rowe, Town Accountant. Jean Fleming, Deputy Moderator. Lauren Goldberg, Town Council from KP Law. Mark Tesdale, Development Services and Town Engineer. Michael Hammond is recording this for us from SMAC Television. And I'm Bob Mullen, your Town Moderator. So welcome to all our panelists and also our town meeting representatives. Now I'd like to go back to Congressman Stephen Lynch, who would like to say a few words. Congressman, we can unmute him. All set, Congressman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's great to be with you. First of all, I want to thank you for the courtesy you've extended to me under these difficult circumstances. I congratulate you on the innovation and thoughtfulness in arranging this Zoom virtual town meeting. Normally, I'm in DC on Monday nights. Tonight, although we remain in session, we're subject to the call of the chair within 24 hours. Right now, we're negotiating a relief package similar to the CARES Act that provided direct aid to Stoughton and many of the towns, all of the towns in my district and across America. Right now, the Senate is at about $1.2 trillion in their proposal, and the House is currently at $2.4 trillion. The HEROES Act, basically what it does is it has three parts to it. One part would allow the federal government to replace the revenue that Stoughton would have received had the pandemic not occurred. So that's the target for every city and town, state government and tribal government. We would try to replace the 2019 revenues that each of those entities would have received had not the pandemic occurred, that's the reason that the amount of money is so large. The second part of the bill, the HEROES Act, would provide unemployment benefits, extended unemployment benefits through February, and it would also provide for stimulus checks for anyone who had been eligible under the CARES Act. With additionally, the unemployment would be with $600 extra on top of the unemployment rate. It provides as well a stimulus payment to anyone who had received payment under the CARES Act, in addition to $500 per dependent. And then the last tranche of it really deals with the coronavirus itself. Excuse me, I don't want to skip over small businesses. It also includes the PPP program for small businesses and medium-sized businesses, similar to what was included in the CARES Act. And then the last section really deals with the coronavirus. It provides research money, money for vaccine development and deployment, and provides money to healthcare centers across the country, as well as hospitals and other research facilities. So those are the big issues, and we'll continue to negotiate that. And it is a daily discussion. We had an update today with Speaker Pelosi and Secretary Mnuchin, who's negotiating on behalf of the administration. We had some progress, but not nearly enough to put something before the House and Senate that might have a chance of passing. So those negotiations continue. I realize you've got a lot of items on the warrant. I don't want to outlast my welcome. I do want to say congratulations to the town of Stoughton. Even during the pandemic, in the recent primary elections, we had a record turnout, which is really to the credit of the people of Stoughton who voted by mail. Some people voted in person, but a tremendous turnout. I want to congratulate Ted Phillips, who was successful in his primary. And lastly, I just want to thank Lou Kafka, our state representative. He represents Sharon, as well as Stoughton and parts of Walpole as well. But I served with Lou in the State House of Representatives. He's been a long and dear friend of mine and a real partner in government. I wish we had better circumstances where we could recognize his service. Maybe we will do that in the future. But I just wanted to thank him for his service to the town of Stoughton and to the other towns in my district. And I just want to say what a honor and a pleasure it was to serve with him in representing the interests of the families of Stoughton. So God bless the town of Stoughton, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. And thank you for the courtesy, Mr. Moderator.
You're welcome, Congressman. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Happy to do it.
Thank you. All right, next we'd like to hear from Select Chair Christine Howe. She has a few announcements. Christine?
All right, can everybody hear me all right? Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending the virtual town meeting, and thank you to Mr. Moderator for letting me speak tonight. I will keep my remarks brief and just want to highlight a few achievements of the town. Before you tonight, you'll see a budget article and a number of other articles that we were kind of pushed out from the spring with the intention of addressing this fall. And I just want to credit our town staff for continuing to pursue that and put us in a position where we can really consider these articles tonight and hopefully move some of these projects forward. In addition, the town recently received I want to make sure I get the entire name right, the Racial Equity Municipal Action Plan technical assistance from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, with the goal of sort of moving forward on some racial equity initiatives in town. And we're pretty excited to be one of a small number of communities awarded in the 101 cities and towns that MAPC represents. We're the only community on sort of the southern region of the state. So we're looking forward to moving that initiative forward, and kudos to Stephanie Patton, Teresa Tapper, and Selectwoman Roberts, who assisted with putting that grant application together. You will see a very brief survey that we're going to send out tomorrow to town meeting reps to collect a little initial data so that we can help move this project forward. So keep an eye out for that in your emails. We would appreciate it if you'd respond to that. And other than that, thank you all again for being on the town meeting tonight, and hopefully we'll get out of here in record time. So, thank you.
Thank you, Christine. I also like to say, I'd like to let everybody know who's present at Town Hall with us this evening. We have Lauren Goldberg, Town Council. Jean Fleming, the Deputy Town Moderator. Obviously, you saw Christine Howe. She's here at Town Hall also with us. We have Stephanie Carrara, the Interim Town Clerk. We have Trish Stropshire from the IT Department. We also have a couple of Stoughton residents who didn't have computer access, so we're trying to facilitate their needs. Cynthia Walsh, who's from Precinct 2, and Phyllis Kelleher, who's also from Precinct 2. I think I have everybody covered here. And because we're doing Zoom webinar, and we're being virtual, as you know, we all need to be patient. I all ask for you to be very patient here. The technology is not perfect for our needs, but we will make it work for the best. Christine Howe has volunteered. She'll be writing down as we discuss each article who raises their hand to speak. So she'll be using a whiteboard. So she'll be, as you raise your hand to speak, she'll be writing that down on the board. Stephanie Carrara, the Interim Town Clerk, is looking at the questions and answers that we call in the Q&A, and she's monitoring that. So as we go forward here this evening, again, I just ask everybody to be patient, and we'll work through the issues and any bugs that we do have. And I don't think we're going to experience too many bugs, but we'll get through them. So at this time, we will suspend our usual precinct count and instead do attendance by using poll software. Only the panelists who are town meeting reps obviously will be able to vote. And so we're going to move, we have to be a little patient as we, what we call, demote people to the room where they can vote. And so we're going to move everybody, all the town meeting reps, to vote at this time. So please go ahead and move them out to vote, please, to the IT department. I'm only muting myself, so I'm ruffling some papers here, so you won't hear that on the computer there.
Congressman, thank you for joining us this evening.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Nice to meet you officially, or sort of officially.
We're waiting for Steve Cavey. Did he get moved? Okay.
Yeah, you just got moved.
Okay, any town meeting reps that are still on the panel? We're gonna take our time this evening. Last June, we were kind of rushed a little bit for time. We're gonna make sure everybody's been moved out before we go to the vote. I don't see anyone else. If you are a town meeting rep, you're still on the panel, please signal me right now. I think we are good. Okay, before we launch the poll, hang on one second. We have 166 filled town meeting rep seats, so 84 is considered a quorum. It's half plus one. So we just need 84. And okay, are we ready to launch the poll? Okay, you're gonna have 20 seconds to vote. So when it comes up, please start voting. We just asked a very, hopefully, easy question. Are you present? If you need help, let me know. We can help you out a little bit.
Being present has a new definition now.
Right. I'm giving everybody 20 seconds, probably about another 10 seconds or so.
So when I put everybody back up.
I'm sorry, I was muted there. All right, voting is over. We just have to end the poll. Appreciate everybody being so patient. Okay, they reminded me to read them. The good thing about virtual meetings, nobody can throw things at you, which is good. I'm not gonna throw any more jokes out there, I apologize. Well, actually, there's some people near me, so I gotta be careful. And we're just waiting for the poll results.
No, I don't hear that.
Don't see the results yet? Okay, there they are. We have yes, 137 yes, 3 decided not applicable. So we have 140 town meeting reps present. So we do have a quorum. Just making a note there. So we do have 140 town meeting reps present. Thank you for voting. You may close your polls, your screens there. All right. So the first order of business this evening is to we need a vote on the use of a remote town meeting platform. I am hopeful that the meeting chooses to undertake the business of the warrant using the virtual software called Zoom webinar. Just want to make sure that we are ready for the poll. Okay, town meetings reps, you just stay where you are. The poll's coming up to vote to go forward with a remote town meeting. Please post a poll. There you are. I'm gonna just read it to you. The poll is moved that we conduct this meeting virtually using Zoom as proposed by the moderator. Your choices are yes, no, abstain. Please go ahead and vote. You have 20 seconds.
If you can give me time, I'd like to promote.
All right, another 10 seconds. Okay, can we close the poll?
Can you remind everybody about what the health delegate and to call that with technical stuff?
All right, while we're just waiting for the poll results, if anybody has any issues, technical issues, the help desk line is 781-232-9248. That's 781-232-9248. I recommend that you write it down next to your computers and other devices so you have that handy. Okay, we have the poll results. The question was, move that we conduct this meeting virtually using Zoom as proposed by the moderator. Yes, 127, no, 8, abstain, 2. The motion passes. So we will conduct our business using virtual Zoom software. Thank you all for voting. Okay, now, okay, hang on 1 minute. We have a.
We might need to do a technical support clarification around the poll.
We're getting concerns in the Q&A. Just stand by, please. I'm just waiting for clarification from the technical team. They wanted to mention something to us.
Bob, we just want to clarify, lots of people are having questions about the movement. I think right before we did polls, there was an announcement that we were moving some people, and so people were a little confused. I just want to clarify, the only folks that were moved were the three attendees that were set as panelists. They were virtually moved with the rest of the town meeting members into the attendee section of the webinar so that they could do the poll. If anybody is having difficulty with the poll, please let us know. And Bob, there are 10 participants with their hands raised. Just flagging that for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Emily. All right, at this point in time, we're going to, there's some people with their hands raised. I just want to see, I have someone trying to look at that for a moment. Okay, Christine, can you, yeah, thank you, Christine, for helping out there. Yes, yeah. We already showed the results there. Thank you. Obviously, at the beginning of all these virtual meetings, sometimes a little shaky for us. We're just getting used to everything. So bear with us a little bit. Once we start moving pretty good, we'll be fine. So Christine, everybody with the raised hands, okay? Okay, Peter Brown, you have your hand raised. Can we move Peter Brown? Allow him to speak. Unmute him when he gets in. Mr. Brown, go ahead. Name and precinct number, please.
Peter Brown, precinct 2.
Yes, Mr. Brown.
Mr. Moderator, I may have inadvertently raised my hand. I was only curious about how to start the process off, and it looks like I'm all set, so I can unraise my hand.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. All right. Can we move Mr. Brown back? Thank you, IT team. Eileen McGuire, can we move her in? She raised her hand. Okay, the hand went down. I assume she no longer wants to say anything. Is there someone else, Christine? Can we move Adam Leonard in to speak? Mr. Leonard, we're just going to unmute you. Go ahead, Mr. Leonard. Name and precinct number.
Adam Leonard, precinct 2. I raised my
Yes.
hand inadvertently as well. Sorry about that.
No problem, no problem. Don't worry about it. We're going to just move you out. Mr. Joseph Soers, Joaquin Soers, precinct 2. Can we move him in to speak? He put his hand down. We need to move in Chet Collins, precinct 1, Chet Collins. Mr. Collins, could you identify yourself and precinct number? You're unmuted. If you just start talking, your microphone should be working. All right, let's leave Mr. Collins there until he figures out that microphone. Can we move into John Perry? Mr. Perry, just unmute yourself and
Bob,
identify
again,
yourself.
sorry, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I had inadvertently as well, I raised my hand a few moments ago, indicating I hadn't been moved to a different room, so, again, inadvertently, that's already been
That's
answered.
okay, Mr. Perry. Don't worry about it. We're
Thank
getting through the few little hiccups here. Can we move him back? Mr. Collins, go ahead. I think we hear you now.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't able to vote on the last two votes that we had. Can you hear me now?
We hear you.
Okay.
You weren't able to vote?
No, there was nothing on my screen.
All right. Sometimes I know from the past, back in June when we did this virtual the first time, sometimes the poll might be behind another screen there on Zoom. Why don't you give a quick call to the help desk? I'll give it to you if you don't have it. Do you have it in front of you, Chet?
Yeah, 71-232-9240.
9248.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's okay. Give them a call and see if they can't rectify that for you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, because I don't want my vote to be discounted tonight.
We'll definitely make sure you get the vote. Thank you, Mr. Collins. Can we move in Robert Blumenthal? Robert Blumenthal. Mr. Blumenthal?
Yeah, evidently it was inadvertent. I did not raise my hand.
Okay, no, it's all right tonight.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. No apologies needed. It's the first time out tonight. Can we move in John DeStefano? Mr. DeStefano is being moved in.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. DeStefano. What's your precinct number, please?
John DeStefano, Precinct 2. I too could not vote for the first two questions. Are we taking attendance tonight so we know? And I want to make sure that I'm accounted for because are we taking attendance tonight per precinct?
Yes, we already had. We already did.
Well, I missed that, so I want to make sure that my
I'm
precinct
writing it.
knows that I'm
We'll mark,
here.
Mr. Stefano, we'll mark that down for you.
Okay. But I didn't know I was supposed to hit the poll button in order to vote, but now I do.
Okay, yeah, so when the poll comes up, that's almost like the clicker software that we use when we're physically meeting.
All right, I think I'm all set then. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, Mr. John, did you write down the help desk line just in case?
Yeah, I wrote it down just in case.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, Bob, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Joe Soers, can you unmute yourself? Mr. Soers, you have to unmute. Okay, it looks like he went away. Is that it? We're looking for George Delinsky. Can we move George Delinsky in?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Can you hear me?
I hear you, George. Could you just tell us your precinct number for the...
Precinct 2, Mr. Moderator.
Go ahead, George.
First off, I wanted to say how dapper you look this evening.
Thank you.
Rest of this meeting. Secondly, the initial count on the quorum was, the town meeting attendance was 140 people, meaning that a majority plus one would be 71 to approve any votes, or has the number increased? That's my first question. The second question is, will the precinct chairman get a count of the attendees from their individual precincts?
We can do that afterwards, after tonight, right? Yeah, we can give you who's present after tonight. What was your first question, George? I'm sorry.
Was the initial count on attendance was 140? Meaning,
That's correct.
has that number increased at all? And will that change the votes at all that we have to take?
Yeah, I'm gonna have town council answer that. Lauren Goldberg, town council.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
You're
the
muted.
votes-
You're muted, Lauren.
Of course, everyone has to do that once. That was my turn. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So the vote count is dependent on how many people are actually voting. So a majority will be determined by a majority of those present and voting. Similarly, a two-thirds vote would be based on two-thirds of those present and voting. So we do have a list of the number of attendees who are eligible to vote. And ultimately, the requirement, though, is the number that are present and voting. And so we'll be able to see that, as will you in the attendee hands up area.
Answer your question, Mr. Dolinsky?
Yeah, one little minor question though. How would abstentions be counted? If we have 140 people voting, if there was abstentions and we require a percentage of vote, how are the abstentions handled?
Town council, go ahead.
Are they not counted, or is the total of the yeas and nays the only ones that count?
Mr. Dolinsky, let town council answer your question. Just hang on a minute. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Abstentions do not count towards the vote, so the abstentions do not affect the percentages. It's how many people present and voting. So that poll that we did, the NA, was there as an option, but typically it will be yes or no. And if you want to abstain, just abstain from casting a vote. Do not cast a vote, yes or no. Just abstain.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
You're welcome, George. Okay, let's move Mr. Dolinsky back. All right, is that all? Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all for being very patient. We're gonna move on. All right, the next thing we just need to do is vote on procedural motions. If we can show that on the, I believe we have a poll on that. Oh, PowerPoint, excuse me, we have a PowerPoint. Kind of ask the PowerPoint to be put on the screen. That's correct. Yeah, what I asked the town meeting reps to do is take a look. We'll give you a couple minutes to read the PowerPoint. And it's the standard. We do this every meeting, every town meeting, every special town meeting. And I'm just going to ask you to do a vote on the poll that we just vote on it. Once we can share, we don't see the particular screen yet. We need to move the screen down a little bit to the next couple of pages. Here we go. All right, these are, I'll read them out loud to everybody. These are the standard procedural motions that we do every meeting. Number one is to move to dispense with the reading of the warrant and the return thereof. Move to request attendance and availability of department heads at town meeting sessions in accordance with section 7-16 of the town charter. Let me do this. These are motions, so can I have a motion to move dispense with the reading of the warrant and the return thereof?
So move, Mr. Moderator.
Is there a second? Second it. It was Seconded, moved by Gene Fleming and seconded by Christine Howe. And we're gonna do these all together. Can I have a motion to move request attendance and availability of department heads at town meeting sessions in accordance with section 7-16 of the town charter? Can I,
So moved, Mr. Moderator.
and moved and seconded. The third one is, can I get a motion to move that no motions for reconsideration of any article shall be in order until all articles have been initially voted?
So moved, Mr. Moderator.
It was moved and seconded. And the last one is, move that town meeting does not take up any new business after 10:30 PM.
So moved, Mr. Moderator.
Second, so moved and seconded. All right. Okay, we're gonna go to a vote. Do we have this on a poll? I believe we do. Just stand by for a minute. I'm just checking. We had this on a poll. Looks like we're doing
We're doing number one, that's all.
Trish. We got a little technical difficulty here. Just stand by, everybody, please. Yeah, I want to vote on all four at once. Can we just edit that poll? We're gonna vote on all four motions at once. Who has his hand raised? Well, we're waiting, yes. Robert Blumenthal, can we move him in to speak? He has his hand raised. I don't.
Robert Blumenthal, precinct 3. For some reason, every time I move around on this tablet or computer, it's raising my hand by mistake, so I don't know what's going on here, but.
Sure, Mr. Blumenthal. Don't worry about that. Okay. I'm trying to mute. I can't mute. I don't see anything here. Give us 2 or 3 minutes to resolve our issue here. Appreciate it.
In that procedure.
No, I can't get to. All right, what we're gonna do just to kind of get through this process is we're gonna vote by using the raised hands. All right, I just want to double check with the IT section that we're all set to vote on this.
All set, the attendees are now clear.
And then after.
Okay, they're all clear. So all those in favor of these four motions, we're voting them all at once. Please raise your hand now. And we'll take a count. All right, 110 yeses. Now we're gonna clear the raised hands. Just give us a moment to clear. Okay, we're good. All those who want to vote no, please vote now. Okay. All right, we're gonna take the count now. How many do we have no's? Four. All right, 110 yeses and 4 no's. So the motion for those four, the four motions pass. Thank you all very much for voting. All right, let's see if we can move on. Now, I just want to explain a couple of things, a little further clarification. We need your cooperation with the raised hands. Obviously, if you want to speak during the article, that's fine. But the Q&A, if you have a point of order, please go to the Q&A and make your point of order in there. Raising hands, we're trying to reserve that for those people who want to speak during the article. All right, so we're going to move forward. All right, I think we're ready to move forward to take up article number 1. Oh, I'm sorry. We made a change. Sorry, another change. We do have some motions to dismiss. Next slide, please. Can everybody see that? I'm hoping. We want to just, before we get started, have these motions dismiss. Article 3, 4, 5, 7, 12, 13, 25, 26, and 27. I have a motion to dismiss. Is there a second? Okay, motion was made by Christine Howe, seconded by Gene Fleming. All right, I just got to ask, do we have a poll on this? If not, we can do a raised hand again.
Yeah.
Raised hand? Okay, we're going to do a raised hand. All right. So to move all these to dismiss these articles, ask you to get ready to vote. We ready to vote? Okay, all those who vote to dismiss these articles, please raise your hand now, and we'll take a count. You have to speak up loud.
123.
Okay, we have a 123 voting yes. Can we clear the board? Are we clear? Just bear with us for a minute. Okay, we're trying to clear the raised hands. So So we can vote again. Let me know when their hands are clear.
Oh, you got it now. Yeah.
Are we good? Okay, all those who want to vote no, please raise your hand. Okay, are we good? Okay, can I get the count, please? 5. All right. Have to take abstentions or we good? Okay, I'm not going to take any abstentions. All right, the motion passes. Yes, 123, no, 5. All right, I think we can move ahead now to conduct the order of business here at tonight's special town meeting. Article 1. I got to refer to Select Chairwoman Christine Howe to read the motion. Go ahead, Christine. Oh, I'm sorry, we just got a little technical issue. We're going to move Christine Howe into the panel. We need to move George Stolinsky out of the panel. Whenever you're ready, Christine, go ahead.
I make a motion to see if the town will vote to approve a collective bargaining agreement between the town and, oh, sorry. I move that the town vote to approve collective bargaining agreement between the town and AFSCME Council 93 for the period of FY20 through FY22, with the funding therefore as already appropriated under Article 20 of the 2020 Spring Annual Town Meeting warrant.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Gene Fleming. All right, can I hear the report from Finance Committee? Ed Trumfield? Can we, yeah, we're gonna have to move that up, promote Ed. We're getting the hang of this slowly but surely. Okay. Now, we are recognizing Christine's taking care of the people raising their hands for questions, so just bear with us until we get the Finance Committee's recommendation on this. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, we need Ed Trumfield. There he is. Hi, Ed.
Hello, can you hear me?
We hear you. Can you put your microphone up just a little tad, a little more?
No, I can't, it's already preset.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll try to get a little closer here. All right, the Finance Committee voted 8 to 7 to refer it to town meeting, and nothing was available at the time of our vote. Did
Thank
hear
you,
me?
Ed.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, now presentation by Dr. Robin Grimm. Dr. Grimm.
Thank you very much. I'll be brief. First, I'd like to thank Bob Mullen for his extraordinary effort and Trish Shropshire and the team of people assisting on this. So just a quick thank you to everybody for this. I'm just going to pop up a share screen. Oh, I don't know if I can. Oh, can you see a screen?
I don't see it yet.
Can I share a screen? It says I can't right now, but host disabled that. Who's my host?
All right, we'll check that for you, Dr. Grimm.
Okay, no problem. I'll just go briefly. So on the virtual table, you will
Dr.
see.
Grimm, go ahead and try it now. Let's just go ahead and try it. They just had to turn
There
the
we
button
go.
on.
There we go. Okay. So very quickly, I'm going to go through this. We have a small unit of dispatchers. Our dispatch unit is a total of 9 full-time when we are at full complement. That is for police and fire combined. A couple goals of this very quickly: reasonable and limited COLAs, creations of classification systems. As you know, we had an old classification system where over the first 10 years, people guaranteed 25%, 2.5% a year, and then they continued to typically get the 2.5% after that. So it was an automatic raise of 2.5% without negotiating anything back or any give back or anything like that. We have worked quickly to get, or aggressively, I should say, to get unions off the grid. The library, as you know, is off the grid. Fire is off the grid. DPW is off the grid. This also pulls dispatch off the grid. The other thing is we are having trouble attracting and retaining dispatchers because with the grid, the whole grid never goes up. People go up. So the starting salary was 10 years old. And what was happening was their contract said that people had to start at step one. We couldn't bring people in. So we had to do a whole new classification scale. We had to determine reasonable agreements for the senior members who were way off the grid, who wouldn't even fit on. So we have separate agreements for those people. The basics of this: we remove bylaw language that gives people a choice between the contract or the bylaw, whichever is better. We just roll those benefits right into the contract. We increase the uniform allowance, $150 in year one, $50 in year two, and $50 in year three, to be more in conformity with what other uniform allowances are in town. Uniform allowances are not available until after the first year because they're allotted a first complement of uniforms. We had sick leave that would mirror Thea, our town hall employees. Access to a police station for a union bulletin board, which is standard. They just didn't have one. The new wage scale for them, they are on a new classification system. It reflects a 2.5 COLA in 20, a 1.0 COLA in 21, and a 1.75 COLA in 22 for those employees who are way off the salary scale. So they don't have any steps left. They've already reached their top longevity step. That's their raises. They already received that. 2.5 is retro because they've already basically had received it as part of the old wage scale. So we kept 2.5 in year one. They agreed to a 1.0 in the current year and a 1.75 in the out year. 2.5% COLA in 20 for all employees who within the first 5 years, which is that first set of grid steps. So they get the COLA plus some of them actually get a step because they're moving up. And so they get, as in most communities, people in their first couple of years of employment get the COLA plus a small increase. Our employees will now get those for the first 4 years, and then they have to wait several years for any other steps. We did that in trade for removing longevity. And again, 2.5 step for any employee in the first 4 years of employment plus a 1% COLA in 21. 6% increase in 21 for employees with over 5 years but less than 13 years. It's only one employee. She fell into a gap. So we pushed her to the 13-year step. We pushed her till, the 5-year step. She will receive no raise other than the COLA until 13 years, and she will no longer receive longevity payments. So she was sort of a one-off that we had to kind of place to get off this grid. But again, she gets no longevity payment. The removal of longevity payouts at 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25 years, they no longer get a flat check every year and increasing in 5-year increments. Instead, we added a step onto the grid scale at 8 years, 13 years, and 20 years of 5%. When you average it out to their longevity, it actually isn't too bad of a cost for us. And I think we end up saving money. You'll see on the sheet later. A $750 EMD stipend for years 20, 21, and 22. This mirrors part of a settlement we gave police officers. A lot of the EMD work is actually done by dispatchers, as this is when they handle an emergency situation over the phone, and they have special training and they're required to do this. Here's the overall cost of the agreement, and this is really what town meeting votes on. In 2020, the total agreement will cost us $2,550. In 2021, it costs us $12,400. And in 2022, it costs us $16,657. We had already assumed in 2020 the 2.5% raise that they got. So that $550 is predominantly the uniform adjustment. In 21, the budget assumed a 1.5 anyway. The overall COLA is a 1% for the people off the grid, so we actually save money on that. The 4 on the grid would receive higher as indicated. They'd get the 1.5 plus their COLA, their step increase, if you will. And the contract for 21 will withstand that $12,400 increase. We had some salary vacancies and whatnot this current year, so we will be able to withstand that. There will be no impact on the town meeting budget as approved. We will be able, I believe, to manage to get all of that $12,000 out of that dispatch contract. If not, we would have to do a transfer from other departments, but it certainly will not go over the town meeting budget. Let me get that piece down, and let me see if I can share one other document for you very quickly for dispatch. Share screen. And this is how the cost breaks down on this. I don't know why it doesn't like to let me scroll on this, but we'll see if I can. Oh, here it is. Okay, so the bottom line you'll see here is that this is the increase in costs, the EMD stipend cost. And the reason it goes up in 21 is we did not have a full complement of employees in 20. Then in 21 and 22, we are presuming all 9 positions are filled, which, by the way, drives our overtime costs down when we fill those 9 positions, because those positions have to be filled. We increased the midnight differential. We did not do a percentage as they asked. We went with a flat rate. And here's the salary over what was budgeted, $5,600 increase and a $9,000 increase in 22. This is the savings on the longevity payouts. And here's the overall cost of the contract for you. So that is dispatch in a nutshell. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Grimm. All right, we're looking for questions. All right, we need to move John Anzavino, precinct 4. We can ask a question. And once I recognize you, please state your name and precinct number. We're moving John Anzavino so he can speak.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator.
Hi, John. Just give us your precinct number, please.
Yeah, John Anzavino, Precinct 4.
Okay, John, go ahead.
My comment on this is the only thing that was on the virtual front table was the MOA, which I think went up fairly recent. The only presentation anybody got was what we just heard, half of which you couldn't hear because we lost sound from Dr. Grimm. So no financial analysis ahead of time. This comes up at the last minute. And I, for one, I don't believe this is how a contract should be presented. I know it's tough, you're negotiating, but you know town meetings are coming. And I, for one, I'll vote against this just because of the fact we cannot allow to continue having things brought to us, literally the night of a meeting, and be expected to go through the whole thing and make an informed decision. So that's my comment on this, and I thank you for your time, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr.
Mullen,
Anzavino.
Mr. Mullen, if I might,
Yes.
I did host a virtual Zoom meeting available for all town meeting reps last week and presented these contracts. Unfortunately, we only had, I believe, 3 town meeting reps show up. It was a virtual meeting. I asked FinCom to hold a meeting last week, and they indicated that they would not join and meet for me to present these 2 contracts to them. So, Mr. Anzavino, I do respect the fact that I put this up today or last night, the MOA, but it has been presented. I offered it on his virtual Zoom meeting last week. FinCom had indicated last week that they did not want to have another meeting and just asked me to present it tonight. I apologize for the delay. We literally have been in negotiations. I finally got the signed contract on this back, actually the signed MOA on it earlier today.
Right. Well, like I said, it's my opinion that we shouldn't be accepting these at the last minute, regardless that you had a meeting last week. This is when the hearing is, this is when town meeting is being held. Hearings have been held throughout by everybody, so I appreciate the conditions you're in, but again, that's my opinion. Anything coming this late, we shouldn't even be listening to it. you.
I respect that. I just ask that you consider that this contract has a very limited financial impact. And I hope that when you look at the police contract, which actually saves us money over the next couple of years, that you would take that into consideration. And again, I apologize for the delay. Sometimes my back is against the wall with negotiations and the timing on town meeting.
Well, I mean, you know,
don't have to keep going.
it is what it is, so.
Okay, Mr. Enzavino?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Dr. Grimm.
Thank you, and Mr. Enzavino. All right, next up is Robert Cohn. Please, move Mr. Robert Cohn in to speak. Mr. Cohn, you've been moved in. Please, again, state your name and precinct number again.
My name is Robert Cohn. I'm from Precinct 5. And Mr. Anzavino hit it right on the head. He's been a member of this town meeting for many, many years. And many, many people have told this town officials that this is not going to be tolerated anymore. And every year we come in, the Finance Committee gets that report, goes over the report, and gives a report. This is nonsense, and it's got to stop. You go along some more, no prices, no prices. And this is not the way you should go. There's another one coming up. We'll leave that. But this has got to stop. I don't care if you negotiated up till today. The rules of these town meetings state that it has to come before the Finance Committee. Finance Committee, all the hours they put in aren't the last minute going to do it. My suggestion is the next time, and Mr. Anzavino was right, 100% right. You shouldn't vote for it. But people got to get pay raises, and I will vote for this, but I sure won't do it next year or the next year if this comes up. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Grimm, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, Mr. Cohn, again, I fully respect that. I'd like to point out that given the environment that we're in with COVID, once again, I'm not making excuses. I would have loved to have presented this to you all. FinCom would not meet last week. Obviously, it's very difficult for them to gather a meeting at the last minute. I absolutely respect, would have loved to have gotten these to you earlier. But I also want to point out there is no fiscal impact on the 21 budget, which actually means that it's not even a FinCom question because there is no fiscal impact. We present this certainly as a courtesy and would absolutely like to have FinCom support. But unfortunately, this is the nature of negotiation. And sometimes as town meeting is coming up, that's what drives our unions to the table when we have something on a deal to go with. And town meeting is sometimes the cutoff. And I've made myself available for negotiations right through. These unions have come to the table. And again, I remind you all that we are getting rid of a 2.5 guaranteed 10-year, 25% raises as a result of being willing to do this. So I absolutely respect your position on this. But again, I remind you, we are not impacting the budget that has already been voted on. And we're not even going into the negotiation line item that I had set aside, the emergency money for negotiations. We don't even have to hit that for these two contracts. So I respect your position. I feel badly I didn't get this to you all sooner. Again, I held a Zoom meeting and I hoped that more people would attend and they did not. And I will continue to try to do these as soon as I possibly can. And I promise you I will do my best.
Mr. Moderator? Mr. Moderator? Mr. Moderator?
Mr. Cohn, go ahead.
I sympathize with you, but when town meeting speaks, and they have spoken, two of us have spoken, someone has got to listen, and before it was more, and it goes to show you how well the grid worked. The grid was never gonna work, and we caught them, no wonder the police department, and the police department was another one that were moving rapidly, because
Well, let's stay on focus on this one
the
here.
bottom line is, I hope the town manager got the gist of the message, because next year, I don't care if she negotiates up to the last minute. I will not vote this. This is principle, the way we do things in this town. And this is not the way we do this stuff. They've got to be done with a procedure, not to come in at the last minute. And that's all I have to say, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn. All right, let's move Mr. Cohn back, and we need the next one on the list. There's several others, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 more people. Jared Rose, can we move Jared Rose in, please? I'm sorry, wait a minute, I apologize, I skipped Candace Fisher. Let's move Candace in first. Candace, you're in. Unmute yourself. Please just give us your precinct. Candace, we cannot hear you.
7,
Go ahead.
7.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, it was an accident.
Okay, you're all
I'm
set?
sorry. Yes,
That's
I'm
all right.
sorry.
No apologies. It's.
Hi,
you know,
Candace.
it's the first article. We're moving along. We're gonna pick up some speed soon. Thank you, Candace.
Sorry.
Okay, next. That's all right. Next on the list is Mr. Jared Rose. Let's move up Jared Rose. If we can move Candace Fisher out. Okay. Well. Did Jared Rose still want to speak? You don't know. He put his hand down. Okay. Pat Colburn. Can we move in Pat Colburn? Patricia Colburn. Okay, Patricia, please unmute yourself and just state your precinct number.
Pat Colburn, Precinct 4. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Hey,
Yes, go
Pat.
right ahead, please.
Hi, thank you. I'm not going to belabor the points, although I agree with both John and Bob. I will say, though, that my first comment is directed more towards the Finance Committee. Don't refer articles to town meeting if you don't have the information, the contracts you need to have a hearing. The second thing is what I struggle with, and I'm inclined to not approve these either because of the last minute nature of them, but I just was on Finance Committee long enough to know how hard people worked to get rid of retro contracts, to get rid of stipends, and especially to get rid of steps plus COLA. So it's distressing for me to see all of those back. And I appreciate what you're saying, Dr. Grimm, that this will cost us less, but for me, the jury is still out a little bit. I guess I'd need to see that after several contracts get passed to make sure that we aren't going backwards to the point that we just can't afford the salary line items. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I would ask people, if you don't mind, everybody has a right to speak. We'll make sure of that. But if you have new information, it's good. If you're gonna, I don't mean any disrespect to anybody. It's just that if it's the same statement you're being made, it'd be good to kind of, if we can move forward on this.
There's a motion to move the question in the Q&A, and that person has to get in line.
Okay.
You're in the speaker line.
Just to remind, was asked to remind people, if you want to speak, you have to get in the speaker line, which is the raised hand. We do have several more people. Can we please move Stephen Phillips in, please? Mr. Stephen Phillips. Go ahead, Mr. Phillips, unmute yourself. Just please give us your precinct number.
I'm in precinct 1, and my apologies. I had the raised hand by accident.
That's okay. No problem, Mr. Phillips. Next one up is Robert Blumenthal. Mr. Blumenthal, when you come in, please give us your precinct name and precinct number. Mr. Blumenthal, go ahead.
That was an accident. I haven't been in the room half the time and it's raising my hand here, so I don't know what's going on.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Rick Hill. Mr. Rick Hill, when you come in, please just state your name and precinct number. Go ahead, Mr. Hill. Just unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Rick Hill, Precinct 2. So a couple of quick questions. First of all, and I tend to do this, it's just an observation, but you have so much information to share, Dr. Grimm, and you speak so quickly. It's very difficult for me anyways to be able to follow along. The other thing is that the information you just presented, the tables or the PowerPoints, that's not on the virtual front table. Is that going to be at some point?
I can put that right up. I can forward that to Trish if she can put that up. I can do that right now.
Yeah. Again, I kind of agree with Mr. Anzavino and Mr. Cohn that these kind of things should have been out there for us to review. So here's a financial question. So the numbers that you read off for 2019, 20, and 21, which was $2,550,
Yep.
12,400, and 16,650.
Yep.
Is that the net over what was budgeted, or is that the entire cost of this contract?
That is the, hold on, let me pull back up what I had for you. Bear with me 1 second. That is the total increase of the cost of the contract. So what happens, how I figured this, I'm not Sue Herman, and Sue normally does these. So it was based on the assumed 2.5 within the current grid structure and 1.5 for those off the grid. So what I based that on was, that's what would have, the overall cost was based on where we were at without a contract, or where we were at with the old contracts, which was the current grid structure would have continued them at 2.5. And the people on the old grid structure, I had budgeted for a 1.5. So based on what we had budgeted in 21, this will be 12,400 more. But actually, if you look at the total, the salary over the budget is how I phrased it. So it's 5,000 more than what we had budgeted. And what we had budgeted was a 2.5 on the old system and a 1.5 with those off the grid.
So traditionally, what we're looking for in these things is the total cost of this agreement. And I don't think we still have that yet, because we don't know what the 2.5 was in the budget.
Yeah, on these 9 people, it's minimal. I mean, it was, I can try to run that. Unfortunately, as I said, Sue Herman was doing FEMA work for me. She normally runs those. But again, this is a 9-person department, so.
Well, I understand, but we're going to step into the patrolman's budget and.
Which is broken down, that one is broken down formally with a cost over total budget, yes.
With a cost over.
Yeah, you will see both. You will see the total cost of the contract and the cost over the total budget with patrol in a much clearer way.
Okay, good, because I didn't really.
Yeah, this one I was less concerned because of the tiny numbers we're talking about here. If you look at it, the 1.5 for those that were off the grid, if you will, those dropped to a 1%. And the people who were on the grid actually went up a little bit, and then they saved that longevity payment in the middle of $4,250 that they saved. Was money that was already budgeted as well. So ultimately, as I said, that we have to absorb, if you will, 12,400 to make that contract work, and we can do that within that budget.
Yeah, if you could just republish your.
I'm sending that to Trish right now. I'm sending that to Trish right now for the virtual table.
No, I just asked that you make the modification to show what the total cost of the contract was. Not just what it was over budget, so that'd be helpful, so I appreciate that. And I'm, again, pretty familiar with contracts, having had to deal with them in a number of capacities over the years, so I can kind of sort of hang with you when you're running those numbers, but again, you're rattling them off because it's so second nature to you, and I'm not sure that everybody in the audience is going to be able to do that as well. So I have to agree with my counterparts that, this understanding your time frame and you're back up against the wall, but people need to really sit down and be able to do an analysis and digest this information, not particularly the terms of the contract. Our job here, our role is to, either approve or not approve the monies, the budget.
Right.
So we don't have a role in negotiating contracts. However, if we're, if it seems to be, either, underpaying or overpaying or whatever it might be in people's judgment, then they should have a way in. So I would just leave you with that, and I appreciate the few minutes here, Mr. Moderator, and let's continue.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hill. All right, next up is Brian Holmes. Can we move Mr. Hill back? And also we need to move Mr. Stephen Phillips back too. Brian Holmes, please state your name and precinct number.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Brian Holmes, Precinct 3.
Go ahead.
Thank you, town meeting members, for being here. I'm speaking directly to you tonight. Chapter 150E closely regulates the collective bargaining process. The process is very open and transparent. There are many steps to the collective bargaining process. Each side is represented by its counsel. There are ground rules that both sides engage in before they sit down at the table and negotiate fairly and equitably a collective bargaining agreement. The employees that we're talking about here are the dispatchers for the police and the fire department, and they are the first point of contact for anybody who's having a really bad day. For anybody that doesn't know me, my career began as a public safety dispatcher in a small town very close by. It led to other things, and I do a different job now. I understand the frustration factor where some of this may seem last minute, but there is a process that got the collective bargaining agreement before town meeting tonight. And if there needs to be revisions on some of the rules for how articles go through town meeting and through the finance committee, then we can certainly firm up those things in the future. But my request for the town meeting members tonight is that this collective bargaining agreement be supported, because the employees at the other end of this process, the people that are doing the job at the other end of this process, deserve not to be punished because of the process. They deserve our support as town employees. I ask that the town meeting support this collective bargaining agreement under Article 1 tonight. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Sorry,
You're
I'm
muted,
muted.
Bob.
Dr. Grimm, any comments to that?
No, and again, yeah, the employees should not suffer for the time constraints that I'm under on these. I agree with town meeting representative Holmes on that. And again, I just, I would have liked to have had it sooner. I wish more people had shown up on my virtual Zoom meeting where I explained this. We had a couple people who asked great questions, and I understand not everybody can show up on those virtual Zoom meetings either, but this is what we're trying to do ahead of time to try to counter that. It's the best I could do.
Thank you, Dr. Grimm. Next up is David Laurie. Mr. Laurie, please, when you come in, please state your name and precinct number.
Hello, Mr. Moderator.
Yes, precinct number, Mr. Laurie.
David Lurie, Precinct 6. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, through you, I want to echo what the previous speaker just mentioned about the hard work that the people on the front line are doing. And this has absolutely nothing to do with the meat of this article. It has to do with the comments that have been coming out from the town manager. It's almost like insult to injury when we hear you say that you tried to get a meeting with finance committee to get these things done. Mm-hmm. It's totally backwards. It starts with the leadership saying no to moving forward past a deadline. You know that we're trying to get things done and doing it in an orderly way, keeping things sane and not last minute, where we have to digest so much information at the last minute to try to jam in an extra FinCom meeting. So I don't want to hear over and over again, because I'm sure this won't be the first time we have to hear about, oh, I tried to get a finance committee meeting in order to vet these things out, which would have been the proper thing to do. And I'm starting to get a little bit cynical over the whole process, because people just say, no, if you just kind of stall right to the last minute of town meeting, we won't have to go through all the, have to go through the meat grinder, which is FinCom, to really see what these things are all about. So I resent the fact that it's because of some kind of scheduling thing. You really have to think long and hard about how you schedule the end dates for when you're done negotiating these collective bargaining. I have no problem with the content of the article. It's the fact that that people feel like they can just skip right over to the last minute, so nobody has a chance to really understand it. I don't know whether people are sensitive about the material, where, God forbid, people should actually understand what kind of contracts the town has to get involved with. But please don't talk about finance committee not squeezing in a last minute meeting to digest this kind of information. I really find it, I'm very resentful over the way that came across. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laurie. All right, we have
if I might respond to that.
Sure, if you want to.
Yeah, Mr. Laurie, I understand that, and I'm admitting that I absolutely agree that these things came last minute, but I will tell you, I resent any implication that I tried to avoid the quote meat grinder of FinCom. I stand up there and I take every hit, everything you all ask, anything people are complaining about, I answer every question. I offered a public hearing on this. I really just have to respond to that, because I am always willing to try to answer any question anybody has. I am not happy these came as late as they did, but I will tell you this, I am not gonna walk away from contracts that either save the town money, like the police one does, or are absolutely tight contracts that will encourage us to keep good employees in critical positions. Unfortunately, my choice is this, to say to these people, sorry, it's gonna be another 6 months and I don't know what that's gonna hold, and I don't know, you know, frankly, I can't do retro. How long can we manage to do that on 1920 to I believe it was Pat Colburn's point, that forces me into a much harder position on retros. So for me, my choice is walk away from a couple of really great deals, or try to do Zoom meetings, hope that FinCom would meet, and I understand what you're saying, but I don't want anybody to think for a second that I duck any question or any challenge to what I put out there. I would never put something out there unless I absolutely believed in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Grimm. Okay, next up is Jeffrey Iverson. So we move in Jeffrey Iverson. Mr. Iverson, go ahead, just state your name and precinct number quickly.
Jeff Iverson, Precinct 1, and Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move the question.
Okay, the question has been moved. Mr. Iverson moved the question. We have, for transparency, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more people in line to speak. But Mr. Iverson moved the question. Right. All right. All right, we're gonna take a vote on moving the question. This means we cut off debate. We have to do this by raised hands. So can we clear the raised hands list? Let me know when the raised hands are cleared. They're good? All right, so this cuts off debate. All those in favor of cutting off debate, please raise your hand. Got about 10 seconds. All right, do I have a count? 115 yes. Is that what I got? 115 yes. Can we clear the board? Let me know when it's cleared. Okay, okay, all those in favor, excuse me, all those that vote no, please raise your hand. Voting no, raise your hand. Ten more seconds. Do I have a count? 6. Okay, the motion to cut off debate passes 115 to 6. Okay, now we're gonna bring up the poll. Dr. Grimm, do you have any last comments you want to make?
Nope, thank you.
My apologies for jumping over
No,
you there
that's
for a
okay.
moment.
That's okay.
All right, we're just moving along now. Yep, we're gonna bring up the poll. And is everybody moved back? I think everybody's moved back. I didn't see anybody. All right, the poll is up. I'm just looking to make sure everybody's been moved back. All right, everybody's been moved back. This is for Article 1, collective bargaining for dispatchers union. A yes or a no? All those in favor, just start voting, please. Yes, no, or abstain? Ten seconds. Okay, can we close the poll and report the results? Yes, end it. End poll. Okay, does everybody see that? Hopefully, Article 1, collective bargaining. I don't have the numbers. Can anybody report the numbers? 85% says yes. 14% say no. All right, in numbers, it's 114 yes, 19 no, 1 abstention. The motion passes. All right, we're moving right along now. Okay, can we bring up, Article 2, collective bargaining for the police patrolman union? Once that comes up, Christine, could I have you read the motion, please, when you have a moment?
I move that the town vote to approve a collective bargaining agreement between the town and the Stoughton Police Patrolmen's Union for the period of FY 20 through FY 22, with the funding therefore as already appropriated under Article 20 of the 2020 Spring Annual Town Meeting warrant.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. I just have a note here. I just want to let everybody know, we've done our best to have the motions on the screen with the article, as you can see. So, this year it's inclusive to make it a little easier for everybody. Motion's been made and seconded. Okay, Dr. Robin Grimm, your presentation, please.
Thank you. Let me just share the screen here. Yes, Patrol Union, okay. So again, we had a couple of goals. Again, the police officers were on sort of the grid. They would come in at like step 8. And so it really didn't have much rhyme or reason to it. This is 2 deals. It's a 1-year and a 3-year, but they went as a package. So the police officers agreed to a 1-year 1.5 like fire did. The only additional thing in that 1-year 1.5 was, and it will come out of the CARES money, it will come out of federal money. This is not part of the town's budget. They will get 1 hour a day, not a shift. So if they do a double, they just get the 1, and it's 1 hour a day of straight time. We're calling it, it's a decontamination time. Because after they have been in patrol cars, together in roll call rooms, physically interacting with people right now, before they can return to their homes, police officers do have to take a special measure for cleaning up. And they asked if there could be some consideration for that in an effort to prevent COVID, particularly with the in and out of patrol cars. There is so much activity that may happen in a patrol car. So we agreed that they could have 1 hour of straight time, and that would come out of the CARES money that is already budgeted in our CARES money spending. And Sue Herman has confirmed that we can do this within CARES. So that's all that was in the 1-year 1.5. Let me just go through the goals. Were very similar to what you saw for dispatch. I also was hoping to attain some savings in this contract and some concessions, because our police department was significantly lower than surroundings. We do not pay our police officers in Stoughton what surrounding officers in similar communities were getting. They're significantly lower than Randolph, which had like an 8% adjustment a few months back. We did comparisons to about 6 or 7 other communities, and they were low. What that means is, because we're part of civil service, we compete with a whole host of other communities to get police officers to want to come to Stoughton, and we're not getting them. We're actually having a hard time bringing people in, and part of it is that our wages were so much lower than others. This contract over the 4 years will bring our wages up to a reasonable amount, a reasonable wage, and we'll do so with some concessions and offsets financially that will yield a savings in some years, if not and a minimal cost at best in the out years. So I actually have to say, on a personal note, I was very excited to get this agreement. It gives both parties what they want. They wanted a little more time off, and we wanted money back in trade for trying to elevate the salaries to a degree that they're fair. So the key drivers, again, the 1 hour was pretty straightforward on the 1-year agreement. And then they said that they would agree to the 1 year if we also came to a 3-year. So that's when we started to really work on the 3-year. Right now, there are 2 pay scales for education. There's the Quinn scale, which is about 12 officers that are on Quinn still. And those are officers hired pre-2009, when the Commonwealth paid a percentage of their salary for the education. It's actually a lot of money. Our younger officers who have education are on a flat rate, and their rate is significantly lower. We did broaden education benefits for fire department, and we felt that this was really important, particularly now that we have police officers who have education in law enforcement and areas and social areas, sociology areas. What we want are officers that also have communication skills that are stronger given the current climate that we're in. So there is a small increase implemented over the 3 years for associates, bachelor's, and master's degrees. It's a flat rate increase. The clothing and equipment allowance, so officers got $1,000 for clothing purchases. They agreed not to take that money, and instead it would just go in a revolving type fund with vouchers, and they could buy up to that amount of new clothing in a year. What we feel is that that's going to save us money ultimately. I can't really quantify that savings because I don't know how much each officer will buy, but typically newer officers will buy more, older officers will buy less. But it all now is funds that stay within the purview of the town, and then it's purchased through a voucher system. So any clothing allowance actually gets used for the uniform. They were also receiving a dry cleaning allowance of $700. They agreed to reduce that allowance to $200 per officer to a $500 allowance. The COVID decontamination hour will then go through December 30th, and again paid for out of CARES. There is an increase in the detail rate for private and utility hires only. The detail rate for town details will not go up. We rolled in the 2.5 accreditation stipend just like we did for hazmat with fire. It's the exact same language. That bump is already in there, so it's not 2.5 plus whatever the COLA is sometimes gets morphed. They already are getting that. It's just in a separate pay line item. We rolled it in. The only financial impact is that so many cents per paycheck is on the base. So there's a slight increase on the base for calculation for overtime, but as with fire, it's minimal. They added one personal day to the contract. It's a day they're already getting under the bylaw, but right now they get to choose between the bylaw and the contract, and we're trying to get rid of that language. So it just codifies what they already get. The new wage scale reflects a 2.5, a 2.0, and a 3.25 on the out year. That's the adjustment year. The total increase for the 4 years, because it's a 4-year package, is a 9.25%. That averages 2.31% per year. Remember, we've been on 2.5% wage scales in this town. So even adjusting them to what is a reasonable pay is less than what we were doing on the old grid. There are no more 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25-year longevity payouts. They are giving up their longevity payment. We are adding to the pay scale a 1% step at 5 years, 1.5% at 12 years, and a 3.25% at 25 years in an effort to keep some of those senior officers on. It's, again, a small number of people that reach that number at any given time, and we feel that that's a worthy investment in an officer that has spent 25 years serving. But again, no more longevity increases in between, and so they sit from 5 years to 12 years, whereas before they got a payout every year from 5 to 10, and then it increased 10 to 15, and then it increased again. So no more of that. Where we got a big savings, right now a police officer gets 15 minutes of overtime pay before every shift for roll call. That's a lot of money. That's like a half hour, it's time and a half. So it's a straight time of a lot of money, and it adds up over the course of a week. They were willing to give that up and trade for compensatory time. Compensatory time, when used down the road, cannot trip overtime unless there's a last minute sick call out. So they can't use that if people are out on vacation days and it's going to trip overtime. The savings to the town on that is approximately $125,000 a year. This allowed us to do all the other things in this contract and not have it cost the town money. And it's the elimination as well of the half-day pay for holidays. Right now, they get paid basically the equivalent of 12 hours of pay for a holiday or time and a half for 8. They will get paid 8 hours of straight time, and then they will get 4 hours of compensatory time for any holiday that they work. That's a savings of about $30,000 per year. 19 and 20, there is no added cost from what was budgeted. In 20 to 21, and this goes to sort of Rick Hill's question, as compared to prior contracts that had 2.5s, it's actually $165,000 a year lower. If we had a wage freeze with absolutely no concession, so if we kept salaries flat with none of the other things that we got, we're still saving $55,580 in 21, this current year. In 21-22, as compared with prior contracts at 2.5, we're saving $147,000. If we had a wage freeze in 21-22 with no concessions, and that's with the 3.25% raise, we're still saving $9,000 with a wage freeze that had no concessions. Some of the savings will be absorbed a little bit as the OT rates will go a little higher because the base pay goes higher. But again, if we draw and have a full complement of officers as we want to, we will see actually a decline in OT. We achieved all our preliminary goals. We heard your call for wage freezes that had come out at a lot of discussions in the last town meeting, but through negotiations, we actually did better, and in such a way that we will be able to attract and retain police officers and pay them fairly for some pretty challenging work right now. Always challenging, but a particularly difficult time. And we want to keep our police officers. We are seeing massive retirements around the country. That's very costly. That's people retiring into our pension systems earlier. We don't want that. That doesn't benefit us, and then we have less experienced people on the road. We incurred moderate increases in retirement costs through raising salaries.
Dr. Grimm, can you summarize because you're out of time?
Last slide, you got the last slide. I'm just going to post for share purposes very quickly. Let me close this one down because I know Rick Hill will want to see this one, and I don't blame him. Share screen. Here are the numbers, and Sue, these are Sue Herman's numbers, so this is a professional finance screen, not like the one a town manager tries to produce.
Dr. Grimm, why don't we just put it up? We need to kind of go to
There
questions.
it is. There it is.
All right, thank you. I need to hear from the Finance Committee. I passed over Ed Trumfield. Sorry, Ed. Ed Trumfield, can you give your report on the Finance Committee? Can we move Ed Trumfield into the panel screen? Unmute yourself, Ed.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I do. Yes, we do.
Okay, the Finance Committee voted to refer to town meeting with a vote of 8 to 7, the same as Article 1. We had nothing to vote on.
Okay, thank you, Ed. All right, now we're gonna move for questions. First up is Joseph Scardino. Please bring Mr. Joseph Scardino in to the panel. When you're in, Joe, please state your name and precinct number. Unmute yourself, please, Joe.
Mr. Moderator, again, I plead a technical difficulty. I don't know how some gremlin must have raised my hand.
Okay, no problem. Next up is Diane Dolan. Can we please move Diane Dolan into the panel?
I'm going to apologize too, Bob. I did not raise my hand.
Okay, we'll move on. That's okay, Diane. Those gremlins are out and about, everybody. Next up is Mr. Scott Carrara. Can we move Scott Carrara in?
Bob, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Carrara. Precinct number, please.
Precinct 2, Scott Carrara, Precinct 2, and member of the Finance Committee.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Mullen, I don't have any questions or problems with the budgets. I had my hand raised when debate was cut off previous, but it does go with both of these. I have actually a little point of information. May I continue, sir?
Yes, as long as it's on Article 2, go right ahead.
Yep. If you look at the votes by the Finance Committee, the vote's 8 to 7 to refer to town meeting. There was a 7, I got it down in my notes, it was a 7-7 dead hole, and the chairman broke the vote to send it to refer because we had to move on. And as far as the town manager calling a meeting of the FinCom, she doesn't call us, she calls our chairman. The chairman sets up the meeting. So why we didn't get called by the chairman, because I'm sure Dr. Grimm told him that she had solved these contracts, but the FinCom was never contacted. So it must have been like, oh, we're just gonna go on the votes and then just shove it through and nobody will question it. Not that anything was done wrong, because there's a subcommittee for police and fire. I sat on the police subcommittee. Chief McNamara explained to us about each thing, the one on the dispatches and the one on this here, the patrol union. She explained what they were. I was gonna be able to tell you that they were losing the dispatches. This is why they had to make a better deal to keep people there, because it's dangerous when they fall below a level. So that's all I want to say is this is the way things transpired. Dr. Grimm did notify the Finance Committee at our last meeting that she said she was close and she was hoping to have something ready by town meeting. So all I want to tell you is 8-7 is a very weak vote, especially when the chairman breaks it. It was a pigeonhole till he broke it, and then it was shuffle it along. So I don't want to say that anybody's pushing things, hiding things, because nothing was hid. And the board, the Finance Committee did its due diligence. And it seems like this is happening a lot, and I just want to explain to you what happened. And I take offense from former Finance Committee people who say we're just jamming things through and we're not doing our diligence. We were under a gun. We were slammed between two elections, a primary and now the major election. So you tell me how much time you got to vet this stuff. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Moderator? Yeah, there you go.
Yes, go ahead.
You were
All right,
unmuted.
I'm sorry, I was muted there for a minute. Yep. Mr. Chester Collins, move him in. So his gremlins are out and about again.
Just an IT update for anyone having issues with the hand raising. If you've touched your hand raising button, it will be blue, and otherwise it would be white. So that is just one way to know if your hand is raised. Thank you.
Dr. Grimm, could you do me a favor and take down that screen, close that screen, and just blocking my view? Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Collins, go ahead. Did he? Yep. Just unmute yourself, Mr. Collins. We'll give you another couple seconds to try to unmute yourself. Click on the bottom of the screen to unmute. All right, gonna have to move on. Mr. Collins, you can stay there and try to work on that. Next up is Brian Holmes. Can we move in Mr. Brian Holmes? Mr. Holmes, when you get moved in, go ahead, name and precinct number, please.
Brian Holmes, Precinct 3. I assure you there are no gremlins in my house. I hit the button on purpose. I'm not going to belabor the points that I made on the previous Article 1. The message would basically be the same. We're talking about employees of this town, and they're performing under extraordinary times on a national level. We have a highly skilled professional workforce. I asked town meeting to support Article 2. They deserve our support. That is all. Thank you.
Mr. Holmes. All right, next up is Mr. John Anzamino. Can we move in John Anzamino, please?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Anzavino, Precinct 4, Finance Committee.
Thank you.
I'm hoping through you to Dr. Grimm, just to get a couple of points of clarification, because I wasn't sure when she went through it. The 2.5% stipend that was given for the accreditation, she said it's been rolled into the base pay. So was that a one-time increase for the 2.5%, so that's in there, just at one time, and it raised it then?
Yes, just like fire, it had raised it already, but it's on a separate line item, so it just gets calculated separately. But this does not continue ongoing. No, it is in the base and we're done. We don't have to deal with it anymore, except that it is recorded for history in the contract. The language does stay in there, so down the road, nobody can say, hey, we want to put in an accreditation stipend, like it never happened when I'm long gone. So it is in there as a breadcrumb, just like longevity is in there as a breadcrumb as well.
All right, and was that done for the FY19, the one-year contract that Deckard put in at that point?
No, that was just a straight 1.5 in the CARES
That
money.
was just a 1.5, but they still got the 2.5% stipend.
That's always built in, yes.
Right, but I mean, that, they did get that for 19.
But it's not 1.5 plus 2.5. That 1.5% is on their base. The 2.5 is on the difference. It's 2.5% of 1.5. So it's 0.025 times 1.5. It's just like fire. They don't get a 4% raise. That bump happened initially. They got that accreditation stipend, and it's just always been in there right along. It's just literally a separate line item on the paycheck.
Right, but that'll be rolled in then for FY21 and going forward.
Yes.
Okay. Then you mentioned something, and I'm not sure. I thought you said something about some things would increase the overtime, but other things may decrease the overtime. If you're given a half a day of comp time, I assume if they take that half day off and you got to cover it by somebody else, that could be have to be done under overtime. But I guess the bottom line is, do you foresee the overtime line item being reduced in the long run with these contracts?
Yes, I do. And I'll tell you why. Overtime, for example, if an officer wants to use that comp time, let's say he wants to take or she wants to take a half day off, 4 hours off. If he or she looks to that schedule and there are already enough people on vacation or on comp time already, and she puts in for that time or he puts in for that time, and it's going to trip overtime, it's going to get denied. The only time it would cost overtime is if at the last minute somebody bangs out sick and you've already put in for that comp time, that day, then we can't cancel it at the last minute. But that doesn't happen all that often. We really do not have a sick time problem in our police department, which is wonderful. The money coming back is a definite approximately $125,000 savings off the top. But yeah, it could occasionally trip it, but for the most part, this compensatory time cannot be used if it's going to trip overtime, and that's in the contract.
All right, and then for the last year, you said the increase was 3.25?
Yes.
Yeah, and you had made mention of that because obviously that's a pretty good kick, but
yeah.
Could you just repeat what you said about that as far as the reasoning behind that and
Yeah. So our officers are paid significantly less than surrounding communities. And we wanted to adjust salaries in such a way that we could do it spread out over several years and retain officers and attract officers. I know 22 could be a tough year, but given that what already planned was that $125,000 of overtime, I had a little bit of wiggle room. Why I put it to the back end is that if I put that adjustment up front, it would be compounding. So ultimately, it's less of a raise. If I put a 3.25 this year, which I probably could have weathered, then next year's 2% would be actually a higher increase. So by pushing it out a little bit, I delay that raise a bit, and I still get ultimately what I need. And what I was looking at on this all was an average of the 2.31 as a pretty good average to be able to adjust our police officers and still not do something that would be egregious on the town and get those concessions. But I did, and I hadn't mentioned this, but I put it into the out year because it's less years of it compounding, that's all.
All right, and then my last question.
Anzavino, you're out of time.
I was just going to ask about the attachment A that was referred to that isn't anywhere to be seen.
That was just the wage scale breakdown. That was what those hourly numbers work out to. And I can forward that to you, but the math that you see is the actual math that the one that I posted.
If you can put it on the virtual table, that's fine. Thank you very
Sure.
much, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, Dr. Grimm.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Anzavino. Next up is Rick Hill. Rick Hill, just unmute yourself. We don't have to move people in and out anymore. At least that's what I'm told.
There we go. Yeah, I had to unmute.
Okay, go ahead, Rick.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just,
Just your precinct number, please, for
oh,
the people
sorry,
at home.
Rick Hill, Precinct 2.
Thank you.
I saw the slide that had a bunch of financial data on it. I'm not sure I was able to digest it pretty quickly. I just didn't, again, my question is, how much is the total cost of this contract in this particular budget year? Not how much is it increasing over what was budgeted, but what is the total cost of this contract? And I didn't see that.
Hold on one second. I will get that for you. It's actually a savings this year.
So
And
you're
not for-
reducing the payroll for the police versus last year?
Yeah, let me, hold on one second. Let me just get my PowerPoint up here, Rick. Make sure I'm giving you accurate information. Yeah, we saved 125,000 plus 30. We saved 155,000 in the overtime for 21. And in doing that, it ultimately saved money because the raises were less than that. So Sue had it put in that if we had had the old 2.5s, we saved $147,000. But in my PowerPoint, which I closed out, and if you give me 1 second, because I was trying to get it all off the screen. PowerPoint. Bear with me 1 second, Rick, and I will get you that answer. And I can put the PowerPoint presentations on the virtual table as well. I thought I had, I totally zoned out on that. I apologize.
Yeah, that'd be great. And if you
Yeah.
could add attachment A to the table too, that would be.
So yeah, as compared to the prior contract with, yeah. So if we had a wage freeze today with no concessions, if we had no raises and no concessions, we would save $55,580 on this contract. So it's not a direct, I didn't go through every line, but because that's a savings of $55,580. That's when we look at the math of what was budgeted for the department. And if Sue had done it as if we continue with 2.5s, that was $165,000. But if we had had a wage freeze and we had no concessions, we're still saving $55,000.
Okay, well, again, if Sue could work up the total cost of this thing.
Yep.
It would be helpful, because at one point I heard that the cost was 9.25%
Yeah.
versus if we had the old grid would have cost us more, but the old grid, 3 times 2.5%, 7.5, and I'm hearing 9.25 is the new.
That's 4 years though. That's 4 years. So don't forget, it's 9.25 over 4 years because we have a 1.5 agreement. So it would have
Okay.
been, 10% with basically a flat, yeah.
So we say 0.75. Is the study that was done of surrounding towns public information?
I don't know if it had ever been produced publicly. It was actually originally a 2016 study that was done, and then some of those towns have since been upgraded, and then I have more recent studies. I could get it to you. I don't see why that's not public information.
Yeah, because we made this adjustment once before because we had trouble both in dispatch and with police to make it,
Yes.
to give them parity. And yet we're doing it again. So I just want to see how out of sync we are.
Yeah.
Maybe this isn't enough.
Well, that adjustment was the first of what was supposed to be a couple of adjustments, as I understand the history.
Okay. Before the,
And that 2016 document was part of that first adjustment, and then it never got, yeah.
yeah, I think I recall seeing the 2016. But it'd be great if I could have it and any updated information. And before the moderator flags me for time here, I know we're saving 15 minutes of overtime at the start of each shift and changing that to comp time. But when somebody uses the comp time, you physically have to pay an officer to come in and work that shift. So I'm not so sure that I see that as a savings. I see that as we're deferring expense to a different time, but we're still going to incur payroll to pay for the comp time that's paying for the 15 minutes in shifts. So
No, that they can't take that comp time if it forces a backfill, unless somebody at the last minute calls out sick. They cannot use that if it forces backfill. We have enough officers that we can go down
I
you and not
understand.
have to trip overtime.
Well,
So
I
if we
know.
go, yeah.
I'm not talking about overtime. I'm just saying, if I wanted to take comp time today and I was scheduled, you're gonna have to call somebody in to replace me.
No, no, not if,
I'm gonna have to, I appreciate the questions and answers. I need to move on, Mr. Hill.
Okay,
thank
Mr.
you.
Moderator, an important topic of discussion, but okay, let's move
I
on.
understand. There's 8 other people in line. I'm just trying to give everybody a fair opportunity. But thank you, Mr. Hill. I appreciate all your comments and questions. Okay, as I mentioned, there's 8 people in line. Mr. Ed Trumfield. Mr. Ed Trumfield, go ahead.
No, I just left my hand up from the last time, so I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Patricia Colburn. Your precinct number, please. Unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Pat Colburn, Precinct 4. I just have a quick question, Mr. Moderator, through you to Dr. Grimm. I'm wondering about in 2023, when you have the 3.25%, what you'll do if revenues are down, because we've gotten burned by that in the past when we have a huge bump on the last year. So have you given any thought to that yet, how you'd handle it?
Well, the fact that if we look at the overall increase of that and we're no longer paying that overtime that was at 125, the actual cost of that, there's actually still a savings in what would have been budgeted for $9,000. What I will say is this: if we hit a really hard time and I have to go back to my unions and ask if there's something they can do for us, then I will. The reality is, I think that right now with the uncertainty, if it was 2.5 next year and 3.25 the following year or vice versa, I think I would be facing that potential issue as well. It's a good question and it's a fair question. But it was a matter of if I have to make the adjustment on the funding to make this contract reasonable compared to other communities. And by the way, one of the other things I have to keep in mind is that police contracts can go to arbitration. So if we don't come to a settlement, we go to arbitration. They'll look at surroundings. That's the first thing they do. And so it's important that we get this to an appropriate level. And again, I kind of put that on the back. So the overall cost of this contract to the town would be even lower. You have a fair question. Right now, it is scheduled to be less money than what it would have been if we had a wage freeze. So if they were at a 0 in that year, still, we would not save anything. We would just have a 0. Right now, even with that, we're saving $9,000. So I don't think I could do much better than that. And I had to give that raise somewhere, that bump somewhere in it. It's a fair question because 22 is going to be a tough year. And I'm going to have it on my back, basically, when I pull that 22 budget together, which is coming soon, to have to consider all that and look at, and remember, we're going to have to budget off of this year's revenue for next year, this year's anticipated, which are much lower. So I have a lower revenue stream to budget off of next year. So I'll be having to deal with that, Pat, literally in the matter of the next couple months. It's a good question, and I'm just going to have to make it work.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is that all, Patricia? Thank you. Okay, next up is Stephen Page. Mr. Page, could you give us your name and precinct number, please?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My name's Stephen Page. I am in precinct 8, and I would like to move the vote.
Move the question?
Yeah, move the question. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. All right. We got to move the people, Mr. Page, back. There is, just so everybody knows, there are 6 people still in line that would like to talk. So moving the question means we're in the debate if the vote passes. So I just want to give everybody, let transparency prevail here. 6 people in line that still want to speak. All right, we're going to clear the raised hands. And once I'm told the raised hands are cleared, we'll take a vote. We're good?
But we're not there. We're not there. Let it move the question.
Yeah, we're moving the question. Okay, so the raised hands are cleared. All those in favor of moving the question, that means cut off debate. Please raise your hand now. Ten seconds. Okay, can I get a count? 109 yes. Okay, we need to clear the screen there. Once I'm told the screen is clear, I'll ask for the next. Okay, it's clear. All those who vote no, please vote now. Raise your hand. 10 seconds. If I could get a count. 12. All right. The summary is yes, 109, no, 12. Motion to cut off debate passes. All right. We're gonna go move to the vote. We just gotta move Mr. Page back. So hold off until Mr. Page gets moved off the panel. Oh, he's okay there? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and vote on Article 2, collective bargaining for the police patrol union. Please put up the poll. Everybody should see the poll. It says Article 2, collective bargaining police patrol union. Yes, no, or abstain. Please vote now. You have 20 seconds. Oh, 5 seconds. All right, let's end the poll and show the results. And I'm gonna need the numbers. I just need the numbers. Yes.
Yes, 112. No, 19. Three abstentions.
Okay, the vote is yes, 112. No, 19. Abstentions, 3. The motion passes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. All right. Let's close the poll. Close that screen. We're gonna go back to the PowerPoint. And we're gonna, just for everybody watching, Article 3, 4, and 5 have been dismissed. We're on Article 6. That appears on page 4, the bottom of page 4 in the warrant book. And it's also on the screen. All right, so just give me a moment here to catch up. In this situation here, there was just 1 minute, please. I'm going to ask town council to explain this article, how we're going to vote this. Warren Goldberg, town council, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is going to be voted in 2 parts. The first part has to do with adjustment to line items and funding sources in the general operating budget. And the second part has to do with anticipated revenue in the cable fund. So the moderator is going to recuse himself from part B. So we're going to start with part A, and it's my, excuse me, I'm sorry, it's my understanding that there's going to also be an amendment to this substitute motion, but we'll take the substitute motion first and then hear from the amendment after that.
Thank you. For the motion, Ed Trumfield, Chair of the FinCom. Can you make the motion?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we do. Go ahead.
Am I on the panel level or whatever?
You're good. Good to go.
Okay. All right, this is Article 6, Supplemental Fiscal Year 2021 Departmental Budgets. And the FinCom motion is that the town will move to adjust the fiscal year 2021 town operating budget and funding sources approved under Article 20 of the June 29, 2020 annual town meeting as follows, with reductions shown in parentheses. In the Part A is a fiscal 21 general fund budget adjustments for the special town meeting tonight, October 19th, 2020. The line items to be adjusted is the regional schools, which is Southeastern, a reduction of $67,247. The fire department line item for firefighters, an increase of $40,000. The Stoughton Public Schools, an increase of $542,767. For that total of an increase of $515,520. And the funding sources are the tax levy to be raised, $283,531 negative. Fiscal year selectmen were transferring from the reserve for negotiations that was to the firefighter budget for $40,000. And we're requesting a transfer from stabilization fund for $759,051 for the total of $515,520. We doing B now or just A? Hello?
I'm sorry, just Ed, Part A, Ed. Part A, you're
Okay.
fine. All right, need a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Gene Fleming. Ed, can you read the Finance Committee report on that section there, that motion?
Yeah, well, this applies to both, but down at the bottom, on page 5, is, the Finance Committee voted 11-3 to recommend to town meeting in the finance, to transfer $759,051 from the General Stabilization Fund to be used to supplement the FY 21 budget due to a decrease in local revenue estimates and to adjust the funding sources as noted, the $751,051 to be allocated as follows: $542,767 to the Stoughton Schools budget and $216,284 to the Stoughton budget. And that's what it is. It's not really to the budget, it's to cover the negative, because the local revenues went down.
Is that your report, Ed, on that?
Well, that's the report. Do you want me to expand on that a little bit as to
No,
what happened?
no, just read the
or-
report. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Dr. Grimm, did you want to talk on this part of it?
Yeah, very, very briefly. As you can see, the 40,000 is a shift in line item from the labor negotiations line item to offset the cost of the fire contract, but that was budgeted within just a different line item in a different department, so it requires a transfer. The local revenue, we have to budget on the revenues from the prior year initially, and then we have to adjust for actuals. The prior year, we actually had earned about 120,000, 120% of the budgeted in 19. In 20, we made the 100% or 99 and change, but that was lower than what we had originally budgeted against, which was at 120% of actuals. So our base number became lower. We still met the goal for 20, but it was a lower number than what we have to budget off of at the early part of the budget season. That being said, I had assured town meeting when you passed the budget for me last year in the spring that I would try to find some savings in case we ran into this, I did squirrel away about $230,000 in the budget that I have, and FinCom had we had a lengthy, healthy discussion on this, on whether or not to offset it with money I've saved at this point in the year, or whether to use stabilization. FinCom opted to use stabilization, trusting that what I've squirreled away, I would keep squirreled away and not spend, and we will not, short of some horrible dire emergency. So that money, that 230,000 of that money is actually in our budget that next year I'm hoping we'll roll back and be able to refill 200,000 of that stabilization money. We're still on a hiring freeze except for critical positions. We're still on a purchasing freeze except for critical purchases. While I won't be able to save 230,000 a quarter because I don't have that much extra in the budget, I'm hoping to continue to save another 40, 50,000 a quarter so that we can just continue to refund that stabilization. So it's a matter of whether the money comes out of my budget pot now or stabilization and from my budget pot back into stabilization. So FinCom decided to go with the stabilization, and I've just assured them, and I'm assuring town meeting, that that money that's sort of, I hate to use the word squirreled away, but that's effectively what it is there, is still in our budget, and with, prior to any, with, barring any more unforeseen things in 2020, will be there to roll back at the end of the year, the fiscal year. So our
Okay.
expenditures have not gone up. This is just a calculation issue, and the money is saved as I assured you I would do.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Grimm. I'm gonna allow Dr. John Marcus, Superintendent of Stoughton Schools, to speak too. And just to let everybody know, there'll be an amendment after he finishes speaking. Dr. Marcus?
Thanks very much, Mr. Moderator, and to Trish and the tech team, you guys are doing a great job, so thank you very much. I'd also like to thank Town Meeting for your time tonight and for always supporting the Stoughton Public Schools, ensuring that we're a source of excellence and pride for this great town. So thank you, everybody. We also have worked really hard this year to spend conservatively and hold back on any new or additional programs. In fact, following the Springtown meeting and very thorough discussions at FinCom, we've even cut back on some positions and materials to prepare for this difficult year. But unfortunately, the cost of educating our students during a pandemic has been pretty unbelievable. We've had to add additional temporary teachers to accommodate social distancing. We've had to hire additional substitutes, clinic aides for isolation rooms, transportation costs, and of course, personal protective gear and enormous amount of technology this year. So I think we all really want our children to be back in school as much as possible. And I want to say that our willingness and our ability to do that really sets Stoughton apart from our neighbors. So a big shout out to everybody for making that happen. So when Governor Baker announced that additional school funding was coming in and that Stoughton would see an increase to Chapter 70, we all really breathed a sigh of relief that we'd be able to continue supporting our students in school even beyond when the federal CARES money runs out in December. And that was a big deal for us, is that we see that we're going to have needs throughout the whole course of the year. And it's important to note that Chapter 70 is really based on the needs of the district. So that additional funding is really because we have additional needs here in Stoughton, and we need to take care of our kids as best as we can. So to be clear, we're very much living within our means, and we're proud to continue the tradition of not coming to town meeting for additional funding. Tonight, we're simply asking for town meeting to approve the transfer of the additional Chapter 70 funds in Governor Baker's budget to the schools, which will allow us to keep kids in school safely and really to provide an excellent education throughout the whole rest of the year for our students. And again, on behalf of the school committee, I thank you all for your support of our wonderful schools, our amazing student, staff, and families. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mullen.
Thank you, Dr. Marcus. Okay, I'm going to hear from Christine Howe for amendment.
No, we got to vote this one first, then an amendment.
No, hang on a second, Ed.
The tech team is going to pull up the amendment momentarily. This was included on the virtual table for folks. The select board took a vote at their previous meeting, reaffirming a vote from a September meeting regarding the amount in our tax levy overlay. So therefore, we have an amendment to this motion.
We're not gonna get it updated, so you have to read it.
We don't have the screen updated, so I will just read it. The proposed amendment to the substitute motion is as follows. I make a motion that the town move to adjust the FY 2021 town operating budget and funding sources approved under Article 20 of the June 29th, 2020 annual town meeting, with the line item adjustments unchanged, but with the amount to be raised by taxation reduced by $483,531, and the amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund increased by $959,051, as indicated on the updated chart. Again, that was included on the virtual table. That's my motion.
Is there a second? Okay.
She did. Oh, can she? I'll ask her.
Sure. So the Board of Assessors approached the Select Board with a request to increase the amount of the tax overlay in anticipation of upcoming appellate tax board decisions and the amount that they believe that the overlay would be underfunded. So essentially what this would do is increase the amount of money that's put toward the overlay out of our tax levy, which effectively decreases the operating budget. So all of the money that's available to then fund the budget. So that's why under the funding sources in the chart, you see that line for tax levy, raise and appropriate. Instead of it being a negative $283,000, it's a negative $483,000, as the board made a motion to increase the levy from, I believe it was, the Finance Committee had recommended to increase it to about $850,000, and the board voted to increase that overlay even more to about $1,050,000. So essentially that left what could be considered a budget deficit or a decreased amount of funding available for our general fund budget. So we have voted to increase the stabilization fund to $959,000 in order to maintain the budget level that we initially had for FY21, but also address that overlay concern. So essentially it shifts money into the overlay, and then we're using money from stabilization to just kind of plug that gap because we had less available out of the tax levy. Hopefully I explained that all correctly. The board did vote 4-1 to pass that increase, and again, it was a request from the Board of Assessors.
Thank you, Christine. Dr. Marcus, would you like to add anything to that? The amendment, or Dr. Grimm, either one want to say anything on that?
No.
We're good?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Marcus. All right. Motion's amendment's been made and seconded. Now for discussion. Ed Trumfield?
Which part are we talking about? The first part, Article 6A?
The amendment to Article 6A.
We're talking about the amendment?
Right.
Well, the Finance Committee had nothing to do with the amendment. We didn't vote for it. We didn't vet it. We thought we had an understanding with the assessors for $850 would have been sufficient. They had a hearing later after we closed all our meetings. They want to increase it to $1050, and they want to use stabilization to do that. And they're concerned that people may come and ask for abatements later, and you have till February 1st to do that. I'm not in favor of using stabilization money to fund the overlay, because that's a normal every year budget item. There are other sources that could be used to fund this. We have free cash, which is not certified yet. We could use the FinCom reserve later once we know how many abatements came in. There could be turnbacks that we could use. Accounts receivable that's used to calculate the overlay, we could collect our money and may not be necessary to use this money. And this is more of a FY '22 issue and not really a '21 issue. And we just should not use stabilization. It's very precious and it shouldn't be used to fund the overlay. That is all.
All right, thank you, Ed. Mr. John Anzavino?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Anzavino, Precinct 4, FinCom. I'm against the amended motion, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the assessors had come in asking for 80,000, and the board voted to give them 200. I believe, from what I heard during those meetings, the accountant and the state felt very comfortable at the 850,000 that was in the overlay. So I really don't understand the big push to go the extra 200 when they were only asking for 80, when the state and our own, I believe the town accountant, they were both satisfied at the 850. They felt comfortable enough with it. So with that, I agree with the FinCom chair that we should not be taking this money out of the overlay, out of the stabilization for this extra 200. And I would recommend we vote against this amended motion.
Mr. Moderator, may I respond to that?
Yes, okay, thank you, Mr. Anzavino. Christine?
Thank
Howell?
you.
Yep, so, thank you, Mr. Anzavino. I believe when it was presented to the board, it was 80,000 in addition to the 850 that the FinCom had already approved. So that would have brought it up to 930,000. When the board looked at the amount needed to sort of net it out, it was $1,050,000 that was the actual number to sort of get our bottom line on one of the documents presented by the accountant and the assessors. And again, the board voted for this in September, and then we revisited that vote. It was a 4-to-1 vote in September, and then we revisited the vote in our meeting on the 13th to reconfirm if the board felt that way. And again, it passed 4-to-1. The one vote against was myself, so I would defer to my other board members if they'd like to speak on this. But that's my understanding of the reasoning behind the approval of this amount to increase it.
Mr. Anzavino, is that all?
Yeah, no, I respect the response. I still am opposed to doing the extra 200 when our accountant and the state felt comfortable at the 850. And as the chairman had said, you know, there are many things that can happen between now and the end of the year where money could be available to make up for that, including the FinCom reserve. So I'm opposed to taking it out of stabilization, so I will vote no on this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Anzavino. Okay, next up is Elliot Hansen. Mr. Hansen, just state your name and precinct number, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, state your name and precinct number, please.
Elliot Hansen, Precinct 1. I have to say that the vote on this, the last two votes, I was unable to vote because I didn't have the screen, voting screen on my computer. Can we go back to the raised hands, lowered hands, in order to vote on this article? I have a problem with that because 5 of my votes have not been recorded.
You want to explain that? Okay, town council is just going to add a couple comments. Go ahead, Warren Goldberg.
And can you still hear me, Bob?
Yeah, just 1 minute, Mr. Hansen.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
Thank you. So the first thing is that Mr. Hanson should immediately call IT. We've
did.
given the number before, and perhaps, Mr. Moderator, we could do it one more time before we move on. As for this proposed amendment, we're going to be voting on the amendment using raised hands. We're going to be voting on the main motion, whether or not amended, using a poll so that we have a record of it for later if needed.
Are you still there, Bob?
Yes, I am, Mr. Yes, Mr. Hanson.
Lauren's still on the screen. Can you hear me, Bob?
I do. Go ahead. Go ahead, Elliot.
All right, thank you. Through you, Mr. Moderator, to the previous speaker, I did in fact contact that 781-232-9248. I never did get a call back. I did get a reply that said that if something was amiss, that they were in fact going to go to the raised hands. But the fact remains is that the polls do not show up on my screen, and I believe there may be some other people that have problems with that. And one other thing entirely disconnected to this, my brother said, "Thank you for being the moderator." He said, "Great choice."
Thank you, Mr. Hanson, and thank you, brother, too. Mr. Hanson, what type of device are you using?
Mine, it's a laptop. It's got Windows 10s.
Okay, just checking. All right, Mr. Hanson, could you call one more time that 781 number, 781-232-9248, and it's a priority. I asked them to make it a priority. Get it resolved for you right away.
I will do that.
Call into that number for me if you don't mind.
I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. All right, we're gonna move on. Mr. Robert Cohn.
The question that Mr. Hanson brought up.
Precinct number, please.
Precinct 5.
Thank you.
The question Mr. Hanson brought up is a very good question. How many votes are going uncounted? And I picked it up at our last meeting that at the last minute we voted and there were 12 people that didn't vote. And now we're going right back to the same thing all over again. Are our votes being counted? And I haven't heard an answer. I called last time and the girl told me my computer was too old. 2 years old and it's old. I have a real big problem with that. And it's getting worse. Now, getting back to this budget, everyone forgets. I just saw the paper today, and it shows you the state hasn't even met to even try to get their budget squared away and other articles, and the state has no money. They're banking on the government, federal government. They have no money either. So where are we going to get all this money? Mr. Anzavino raised the question about the $80,000. $80,000 in another year or so, or even at the end of this year, what difference did we bring this back at the end of the year? There's no big thing. Remember, this town is gonna, if we're going at this and the money we're spending, we're gonna run out of money eventually. And that's a good thing because maybe the states will build us new schools and everything. It's bad because this town is a good town and we're always fiscal responsible. And I think we ought to vote this down, and if they need it, let them come back at another time. And I think things will get better towards the end of next year. This meeting here, I expressed this to the chairman. I don't like this agenda, but again, we have a virus out there, and I don't want to see anyone ever get sick, ever. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn. Go ahead, Christine.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just to respond to that previous comments, just so it's clear that the board does support the other lines in this budget, particularly as noted, our fire department increase, the public schools, as Dr. Marcus explained, is basically the allocation of the Chapter 70 money. So that increased And in the most recent FY21 cherry sheets that were sent out by DLS, we did see pretty much the same funding as anticipated for FY21 on our local government aid as we've been anticipating. In terms of the tax levy, again, we've moved a chunk of that funding to the levy to account for that overlay. The remaining decreases were basically savings that Dr. Grimm has implemented over the course of the year in the event there's any need for that. And the stabilization fund is sort of filling the gap on what's needed for both for those line item adjustments in the positive above as you're seeing. And again, a lot of this decrease is not because of the state aid, but in fact, our local receipts were lower than our estimate, which was based off of FY19, which was a particularly good year. So we came in sort of meeting what we normally would in terms of percents. I think it was, and Dr. Grimm can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was around 98% or 97%, which is very good in terms of meeting our estimate. But that was such a high year that it ended up creating a bit of a gap because we didn't meet that extra high benchmark, and it was a little bit low. It wasn't 115% of projections. So FY21, I think we are comfortable with this budget, and we're able to move it forward, and we feel confident that we can fulfill this. But as Mr. Cohen pointed out, there, we might see some adjustments in FY22. So I feel confident. I believe the board feels confident with this budget, and we'll address FY22 as we need to, and appropriately move that budget forward. But for now, I believe this is supported by both superintendent, town manager, and the board.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Next up is Mr. Stephen Phillips.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator. Can you hear me?
Yes, give us your precinct number, please.
Hi, my name is Stephen Phillips, Precinct 1, and to you, Mr. Moderator. I've heard my comrades in the other precincts, and my question is on the stabilization fund. How much do we have available in the stabilization fund? And is that the only avenue we've considered with respects to monies that are necessary for the line items above?
So the question is what's the fund balance of the stabilization fund?
Yes, sir.
Is Bill Rowe on? Town accountant?
Moderator?
Yes, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, yeah, as of now, before any transfers out, we have $6,004,000 roughly.
Is any of the
4,000? Go ahead.
Is any other or additional funds coming out of the stabilization fund moving forward? Just might as well know that now.
There's nothing planned to take from the stabilization fund for fiscal 21.
Is there a certain amount we usually carry that keeps us comfortable as a town?
We, not generally. We try to, whatever money is available, we try to put in there after our obligations are met for the appropriations. Town meeting, you did a wonderful job in June because you took $775,000 from the unexpended appropriations. You transferred 500 into stabilization and 275,000 to the fire apparatus stabilization. So that was an excellent move. And then we also transferred an additional 500,000 from the fiscal 2021 budget into stabilization. So we transferred a total of $1 million into stabilization at that town meeting, and then 275,000 into the fire apparatus stabilization, which should cover the new ambulance that the fire chief is planning on getting next year. But no, there's no additional. We just try to stick away what we can, whenever we can. Helps our bond rating to increase our reserves, and it has money available for times like these when we might need it.
If I could also add to that, Mr. Mullen?
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Grimm.
Yeah, that Mr. Phillips, that's a really important question, and Bill just touched on it on the bond rating question. We always want to have, try to keep some percentage of your budget in your quote rainy day fund. And people are talking about today being one of those rainy days. And we're all very reticent about using stabilization money for that reason. But I will tell you that we did just recently get a bond rating, a stable bond rating. We were not dropped, we were not raised, but we were not dropped. We already are at a pretty good bond rating. And we did tell them in the meeting with the rating agency that there was a vote now to potentially use some of this stabilization money. And we didn't get a hit for that. Bill, I defer to you. I don't know what they may have said to you separately, but I got the sense that there was no hit. Our bond rating stayed stable, even with the rating agencies knowing that there was a consideration for using a portion of this money to just kind of bridge us a little bit this year. They also were aware that we had the little 200,000 extra on the operating budget. But again, you're right. You always want to have some stabilization money there. But this million, as Bill pointed out, was money that got added in this year very wisely, knowing that this could come.
Thank you.
Phillips, are we all set?
Yes. Thank
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next up is Agavan Shoemaker.
Mr. Moderator, I would like to make a motion to move the question. I'm precinct 5. I apologize.
Okay, the motion has been moved, move the question. It's been seconded. All right, we got to clear the screen for the raised hands. All right. Yep, I just want to let you know, moving the question means cut off debate, and I just want to let you know how many people in line to talk and speak. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. We're down. 10 people are still in line to speak right now. All right, cutting off debate means those people won't be able to speak. All right, so is the screen clear for raising the hands? Okay.
Oh, no, it's like.
Okay, all those in favor of moving the question, please raise your hands now. Ten seconds. All right, if I can get a count, please. 102, yes. We need to clear the screen. Let me know when the screen is cleared. Okay, all those who vote no, please raise your hand now. Five seconds. If I can get a count, please. 19. The motion to cut off debate passes. 102 yes, 19 no. Yes, Christine would like to summarize. Go ahead, Christine Ho.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So again, this amended motion, the only changes here are on the tax levy. The raise and appropriate would be negative $483,531, and the stabilization fund would increase to $959,051. And this is a response to a request from the Board of Assessors to the Select Board to increase the overlay, the amount that we did to $1,050,000, essentially an additional $200,000. So in order to offset that and maintain the balanced budget at the level that we approved in the annual town meeting, we've increased the funding from the stabilization fund and offsetting that negative on the tax levy that you see on the screen there. And so this is only different from the original motion or the substitute motion presented by the FinCom in that tax levy line item and the stabilization fund in order to account for that increase in the overlay.
Thank you, Ms. Hull. Would Dr. Marcus like to add anything?
No.
Okay. Okay, this is going to be just the accept the amendment is just to a majority vote. All right, so we're going to do raised hands.
So they need to clear it.
clear the raised hands, please. And please tell me when the raised hands are cleared. They're good? Okay. All those for this amendment, please raise your hand. Moving the amendment forward to be voted on. Ten seconds. All right, if I get you a count. 79 yes. And let's clear the screen. Please let me know when the screen has been cleared.
Okay, good.
Okay, the screen is cleared. All those who vote no, please raise your hand. Ten seconds. All right, if I could get a count. 45 no. So motion, the amendment motion, moving the amendment forward, the motion for that passes 79 yes, 45 no.
Now you're gonna go straight to the vote on the main motion
Okay, now we're gonna go
as amended.
straight to the main motion as amended. All right, Town Council, could you explain what we're doing one more time? I'm asking Town Council just one more time. We're voting on the main. As amended.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So what we're voting on was the main motion as amended. So the amendment increased the amount to be reduced from tax levy by 200 to 483,531. The stabilization fund was increased from 759 to 959,051. And the motion to move the question meant we went directly to the amendment, and now we'll go directly to the main motion as amended. However, I do note that there are some questions in the Q&A, Mr. Moderator, so we should probably check that first.
Okay.
Yep. So the questions appear to all be related to what the quantum of vote for this main motion as amended will be, and it is a 2/3 vote because there's a transfer from the stabilization fund. So there'll be a 2/3 vote on the main motion as amended. They're all about 2/3 to take, oh, sorry, hold on one second. So you may just want to, oh, she said thank you. I think that
Okay.
answered the question.
Yeah, I
You
believe,
can ask her.
yeah, Pat Coburn, did you have a point of order? Patricia Coburn?
The attorney, thank you, Precinct 4, just answered the
Answered it.
question. I wanted to make sure we knew that it was a 2/3 vote.
You're correct. It is a 2/3 vote since it deals with the stabilization fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Hill? Rick Hill?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Rick Hill, Precinct 2. I guess I'm confused about what we're voting on.
Okay, I can ask Town Council to explain it one more time. One of the reps have stating that he's a little confused.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. So the main motion as amended requires a 2/3 vote because there's a transfer from stabilization. Under town meeting time and the rules of parliamentary procedure, an amendment to a vote is only a majority. However, approval of the main motion as amended requires a 2/3. So there will be a 2/3 vote requirement for this motion that's pending.
So we had to, thank you, Ms. Goldberg. So we had to approve the main motion first? Is that what the first vote was?
Mr. Moderator.
Yes, go ahead, Town Council.
So the first vote was on whether to approve the amendment. So the amendment changed the funding source amounts from the original recommended by the Finance Committee. So the vote that was just taken, originally it was a motion to move the question, that passed, and it went to the motion to amend, and that passed. And so now we've arrived at the amended motion, and in order to approve it, it would require a 2/3 vote.
Right, that's what I thought. It seems like we're amending the amendment, but, and just a couple of quick points. And I'm on the Board of Assessors, but the Board of Assessors only requested $80,000. It's documented in a memo to the town on September 10th. So, and I know that Chapter 70 money came in, and Dr. Marcus spoke about using some of that money, but I'm not hearing that that's happening. And then we also have $2.1 million in CARES funding that we've requested that doesn't factor in here at all as well. I probably don't need any response to any of that. It's just FYI. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna go ahead and vote now. I'm sorry, Christine, I'm sorry. I didn't see you. Go ahead, Christine Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just wanted to kind of clarify that last point. The CARES Act funding is for very specific uses and has been pretty much allocated and determined. The Chapter 70 funding is in order to run the school budget. And I don't think it's appropriate to conflate the two, particularly in this instance. And as noted, that 80,000 was in addition to the 850,000. So it would have been about 930,000, and the board looked at netting out the potential overlay by passing that 200,000. But I would really urge folks to vote in favor of this, particularly to address the funding needed for the schools and the funding needed to support our overall budget and address the overlay concerns. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Marcus, did you want to say something?
No, I just wanted to echo what Chairman Howe just said. I think it's incredibly important, and again, it'll provide the needed funds in order for us to be able to keep doing what we're doing right now and make for a great education for our kids. So we really appreciate that support. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marcus. Okay, let's get ready for the vote. We'll do the raised hands. Can we clear the screen for raised hands? Again, this is requires a 2/3 vote. Let me know when the raised hand screen is clear. Okay, raised hands is clear. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Ten seconds. Okay, if I could get a count, please. 99 yes. If we can clear the screen, please. Let me know when the screen is cleared.
Yes.
Okay, the screen is clear. All those who vote no, please raise your hand. Ten seconds. If I could get a count, please. 28. That's 2/3, correct? I'd like a confirmation. Okay, motion passes. 99, yes, 28, no. Okay, I have to recuse myself from the next section of this article. Gene Fleming. Yeah, we'll just switch seats. Gene Fleming, Deputy Moderator. Yeah, for the second part of the article.
Could we have the PowerPoint presentation put back up, please? Okay, who's gonna make the vote? Christine? Okay. Mr. Trumfio, could we have the motion from the Finance Committee, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, the motion was to transfer the Cable Access Enterprise Fund to reduce the line item by $2,000 and to reduce the funding in that same enterprise by $2,000. And the Finance Committee voted 11-3 to recommend to town meeting.
Motions have been made and seconded. Dr. Grimm? Do you have anything you'd like to say?
No. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
You, Dr. Grimm. Dr. Marcus doesn't have anything for you
All
to
set.
worry
Thank you
about.
very much.
Thank you. Mr. Laurie, would you please state your name and precinct number, please?
Yes, thank you, David Lurie, Precinct 6. Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm a little bit concerned. I was trying to make a point of procedure when the vote was taken on the amended motion. That was the vote before the final main motion. If we're transferring funds from stabilization, what's the difference whether it's an amended motion or the main motion? Don't you require a 2/3 vote on the amended motion? I understand under normal circumstance, so through you to obviously the town council, but wouldn't it be natural that if you're dealing with a transfer from stabilization, that it always follows a 2/3 rule on the vote?
Mr. Laurie, I'm going to ask town council to answer that for you.
Thank you, Deputy Moderator. The rules of parliamentary procedure provide that motions to amend are a majority vote, and the main motion as amended is subject to whatever quantum of vote is required for the action. So just like if we were to have a motion to amend on a zoning article, the motion to amend would be a majority, but the amended main motion would require a 2/3 vote. It's the same here. So in this case, the majority is required to amend the main motion, and then the 2/3 was required to approve the main motion as amended.
All right, thank you. I think, to the previous moderator, I think we should have had more debate. I think it got cut off way too soon. That was not my favorite vote, and I'll just tell you that much. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Carrera, would you please state your name and precinct?
Scott Carrara, Precinct 2. Madam Chairman, through you to Town Council. I'm not sure, but are we expanding the motion by the amendment?
Madam Deputy Moderator.
this question applies to the previous motion that was just passed for 2/3. We were always told that you can't expand on an article, and we're referring to a vote that was going to be taken at the previous annual town meeting, and this is a special town meeting, so you can't use information from the previous one, annual town meeting with this. It stands alone now, and we're expanding an article that was never before the FinCom. The FinCom voted very, very seriously on the stabilization.
These are two separate votes, Mr. Carrara. This one does not have an amendment to it.
I know, what I'm asking is, did we expand the previous article? The debate was cut off, and that was my question.
Well, it's too late now because the vote has been taken on the.
I know, but what's going to happen when it gets to the Attorney General's office? You think they're going to just jam it through, or do you think there'll be questions?
Mr. Carrara, the Attorney General will let us know what happens when it gets there. Well, it's not going to go. This is not a zoning article or a change to the charter or to the.
I just wanted an answer whether it was expanded or if it wasn't. If it wasn't, then it wasn't. But it just seems as though.
Madam Moderator, if I may.
Certainly.
Thank you. The question about scope of the article is a decision for the moderator to make. The moderator didn't declare that the motion was outside the scope. And in fact, when you look at the article, it's really those totals that would likely be reviewed by a court. The case law is very clear that the moderator's discretion is unlikely to be reviewed and unlikely to be overturned. In any event, that article or that portion of the article has already been voted. The moderator did not raise the issue of scope. And so that wasn't even an issue to be discussed. We're on 6B now, and we are going to wind up moving forward. I'm happy to discuss the case law afterward, of course. So thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Carrara.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? If there are no further questions, we're going to take a vote. This again will be raised hands. All those in favor of the motion for Article 6B, please vote yes now.
I can't vote.
If anyone has trouble voting, they need to call the IT line.
Did they get?
Gene, 99.
99. There are 99 votes for yes to approve the motion. Now, any votes against the motion for Article 6B, please raise your hand now. Wait a minute.
Okay. No, it's
Okay, all set. Can raise your hand. Do we get a count on the nose?
Yeah. 11.
The motion passes 99 yes, 11 no. And I will turn the chair back to our moderator.
You okay?
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Moderator. Okay, yep, that's your book. All right, Article 7 was dismissed. If we can turn to page 6, Article 8, capital equipment purchases. Mr. Ed Trumfield, Chair of the FinCom, could you read the motion, please?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Article 8, proposed motion. That the town vote to appropriate sufficient sums of money to purchase and/or lease purchase for terms of up to or more than 3 years, the following items, including equipping of vehicles, equipment listed, and as applicable, professional engineering, architectural services, design, site preparation and demolition, installation, and for all items other than incidental and related costs, all as set forth below, and for the amount shown, with each line to be considered as a separate appropriation and as funding therefore to transfer from the funding sources listed in the amounts and for the purposes shown in said chart below, i.e. all those funding sources listed below not identified as borrowing, and further to authorize the treasurer with the approval of the Board of Selectmen to borrow such sums for those items identified as borrowing pursuant to general laws, chapters 44, sections 7 and 8, or any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds and notes therefore, and further that any premium received upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this vote, less any premium applied to the payment of the costs of issuance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this vote in accordance with general laws, chapter 44, sections 20, thereby reducing by a like amount the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs. And this is a total of $932,000 broken down by each department.
Okay, thank you, Ed. It was seconded by Christine Howe. Oh, can we have the slide moved up a little bit to the next slide? Nope, went back. Previous slide. Okay, can you hold it there, please? Dr. Grimm?
Yeah, very quickly, most of these were things that were moved forward from Springtown meeting. We did trim it back a little bit from there, even what was on Springtown meeting. This basically are the types of things that we borrow or buy to maintain our general infrastructure so that we don't fall far behind. If we don't, as debt falls off, you want to sort of spend that amount to maintain your infrastructure. In this case, it might be plow trucks or vehicle brush trucks for fire, things like that they've reached the end of their lifespan and we can no longer, afford to keep them going. So we look to borrow. Right now, borrowing rates are particularly good. So I believe we got 1.35% on our borrowing last week. We may not always get that rate, but again, we're being cautious about borrowing, but we don't want to fall so far behind that we have to spend huge amounts of money or borrow disproportionate amounts in the future. Very briefly, I just want to run through them very quickly, and then if there are any questions, we'll forward those to the department heads. Police Department, 3 marked cruisers and 1 unmarked. Those 3 marked cruisers are standard purchase. It's a policy we've had to buy 3 marked a year. The 1 unmarked is to replace a 2012 unmarked, so it's to replace an 8-year-old unmarked vehicle. The Fire Department, there's a staff vehicle. Our chief's vehicles are pretty old and outdated. And 1 utility is a vehicle brush truck. And we don't have it's a vehicle that actually can get into brush to handle fires. And then radios and communication upgrades. Personal protective equipment as well for our fire department. diagnostic equipment and tools. If there are specific needs on that, Chief Laracy's here and can speak to those directly. DPW, the F-250 pickup truck with a plow. Again, this is sort of a rolling thing that we do. Certain trucks have to come offline at a certain point because they cost too much to repair, and we try to keep a good, healthy fleet. We do a great job maintaining our trucks. I'm amazed at the age of some of our fleet, but the reality is it's New England, and snow and salt do a number. Salt brine machine, we can get into more detail on that. We right now buy our salt brine from a neighboring community, and we are completely dependent on them. There was a big controversy because there was an agreement to buy this system 5 or 6 years ago, and the whole system was never purchased. And I know several town meeting reps were pretty disappointed that they voted to purchase a system that was never fully purchased, and are wondering why we're bringing it back now. I can't speak to what happened 5 years ago, but what I can tell you is we have the storage for the brine. We don't have the machine to make the brine, which is critical. This is why our roads do not pack. This is why when you go through Stoughton, the town roads are actually down to pavement. This is a pre-treat. It will pay for itself. Ultimately, we have to buy the brine. And again, we're depending on a neighboring community being able to supply it to us. A medium dump truck and plow, pretty self-explanatory. And sanitation vehicles, extraordinary repairs. Our trash trucks are extremely expensive to repair, and they are such huge capital investments that we actually put this under a capital borrowing. So in a nutshell, that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Grimm. Just an FYI to everybody, we'll try to do this like we did in the past town meetings. There's still going to be time for discussion. I just want to explain this for one moment. We'll vote by department. The polls will come up by the department, like police department. Then we'll have another poll for fire department, then another poll for Department of Public Works. All right. I see that Pat Colburn has a question. Pat Colburn?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Pat Colburn, Precinct 4. I'll just say this up front rather than at each department. I still can't get my head around the fact that we basically took almost $1 million out of stabilization to fund the operating budget. I don't think we should be borrowing this amount, and I think we certainly shouldn't be using free cash for anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia.
If I could just, fair point, Pat, I just want to reiterate that stabilization money is not, our expenditures are in line. We're not off on our expenditures. We have not overspent the budget. Our overall revenues declined. We have enough money on the municipal side to cover that. Stabilization was the option that the FinCom used instead of using the money I already had saved in the budget. So just for clarification, we are not off, if you will. I understand the point completely about the concern about borrowing, however.
Thank you.
George Delensky?
Question on this. The article itself called for an expenditure of $932,000. That's on page number 7. And then when you look on page number 9, the total there, you add up all the the items, there's $829,000, which is a difference of $103,000. Why the difference?
Dr. Grimm, you or can anybody else answer that?
That may be an error. Let me look. I don't know if Bill is on. Bill may also have a sense of this. I want to say that 929 was the old, 932 was the old number. And we slimmed it back to the 829, but I just want to be sure before I give that answer.
Counselor, did you want to add something to this? Just give her a moment here to get on.
Thank you. Mr. Moderator, as I recall, one of the items that was originally proposed was not funded. I believe the pickup truck with plow was not funded, and that's the difference in the costs.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, Bill Rowe, Town Accountant.
Ms. Goldberg is correct. We had two items, I believe, that were not funded. We originally were going to go with 2 staff vehicles for the fire department. We went with 1 instead. Finance Committee approved 1. And then that again included the pickup truck as well, the original estimate of the pickup truck.
Actually, just to clarify, it was originally one fire vehicle. FinCom actually was gonna make it two, Bill, and then it went back to the one.
Correct.
It was two back at town meeting, but it absolutely is the pickup. It's voted not to recommend. Thanks, Lauren.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Dolinsky?
So I understand now we're talking about a borrowing of $829,000, correct?
Correct.
932.
A total article of 829. Some of it is free cash.
Out of the 829, there's free cash coming out? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, some of those articles are partially funded by free cash.
Right, okay, but is the borrowing end 829 or is it even less?
Less.
It's even less than 829.
Yeah, the borrowing, because the free cash is 28,000 and I think 7 is about 35,000. I believe it was about 40,000 in free cash, Bill?
35,000, it's 28,835.
Yeah, and then 10 on page 1.
That's correct.
And then you got,
Under page 8 at the bottom, there's 10,000.
yeah, and you got another 10, and then you got also from available funds, 74, 74, 16.
It's
So
a
you got
28, 30,
about 45,000 off of that.
Yep.
All right, now, one other question, if I may, and I know I'm monopolizing the time. When we borrow, as an example, you got a borrowing of $180,000 for the cruises, okay, marked and unmarked. We're gonna, or 230,000 between the two, and you got a rate of you said 1.35% for the borrowing interest charge.
Well, that's what we got on the last one. I don't know that we would necessarily get it again.
All right, well, whatever.
Low.
What is the total amount, what we would actually pay with the borrowing added onto this? So these numbers, the 230,000 between those two vehicles, actually cost us a lot more than 230 over the period of time that we're borrowing for, correct? Because some of it's going to appear in the interest payments that we have to pay. So what are these? Do we know approximately what these would actually calculate out to be?
I would defer to Bill on that. I can't amateurize that out of my head.
Yeah, we would, I would need to do a projection for each one. It depends on the useful life of the equipment. The selectmen need to vote a useful life, so it's usually from 5 to 20 years, depending on what the useful life of the vehicle is as voted by the select board. But there is if you go into the Division of Local Services website, there is a debt service calculator. You put those words in there, but you know, it depends on the useful life of the vehicle. The larger trucks are usually 10 to 15 years. Police cruisers are 3 years. And the interest rate, we usually go 3 or 4% for an estimate.
And Mr. Dolinsky, to your point, in an ideal world, things like the police cars and frankly, a fire chief's vehicle, for example, are ideally things that we would like to buy outright. And our goal is to eventually get to the point where we can. When the useful life is less than 5 years, you'd prefer to do that. And this is why we're working so hard toward a capital budget plan overall anyway, to figure out what exactly we should be trying to pay for out of an operating budget, though it's not always easy.
No, I understand that. I mean, especially with the police cars, I'm not picking on the police department, but
no, but they're a good example. They're a good example of something that we really wish we could buy outright. I wish we could buy
nice.
these outright.
But we haven't hit the lottery yet, so.
We'll work. We get a couple of new businesses come in. Hopefully
All right.
on Park Street, we'll have the money.
And Mr. Dolinsky, sometimes we can generate a premium on a bond sale, and that can cover some of the costs of the smaller items. Like on this last bond issue that we had like, I'm not sure the exact amount, it was $400,000 to $500,000 in premium generated, and we used that to apply towards some of the smaller purchases. So we did not need to borrow anything for the police cars because we were able to use part of the premium to fund those. So that was a good thing.
All right, well, I appreciate your answers, so we'll muddle through for the rest.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing, Mr. Moderator. Yeah,
Yes.
for Article 8, it's $38,835 in free cash, $790,165 in borrowing.
Okay, thank you, Bill Rowe. Okay, George, you all set? I believe so. Okay, let's move on. Jeffrey Iverson.
Yes, hi, Jeff Iverson, Precinct 1. And, we talk about the vehicles and, there's probably, good infrastructure use there for those. We don't want to have, police and fire departments with unreliable vehicles, especially if the budget gets harder and we have to stretch those useful lives, in another year. If the budget's good right now, we should work on that. And then the salt brine machine, if I'm not mistaken, I think I saw somewhere that we expect some kind of return on investment in this capex here. I think in terms of producing our own brine versus purchasing it. Is that through you, Mr. Moderator? Is there a way to verify that?
Yeah, I believe Tom Fitzgerald is on the meeting, the Public Works Director. He can address that, but yeah, at some point, we're hopeful that we'll be able to make it at a cheaper cost than we would buy it, and also not have our dependence on a neighboring community that may or may not have enough to sell us. Tom, if he's on there, can we put Tom on the panel?
I believe he was.
Yep. Mr. Moderator?
Yeah.
Tom Fitzgerald, Public Works Director. There is a, to purchase the brine, it's about 95 cents a gallon. With this equipment, if it was purchased, we could actually manufacture the brine for about 10 cents a gallon. Quick analysis for an application for a snowstorm event, we put down 9,500 gallons of brine. If you do the quick math, as it is in the book there, if we make 85,000 gallons of brine, we've essentially paid ourselves for this piece of equipment as opposed to buying the brine pre-manufactured from a vendor. So it's a relatively quick payback for this investment. The useful life of this machine is well over 10 years. It greatly enhances our flexibility to have the ability to make this material in-house, and it's makes sense dollars and cents wise too.
Great. So, I mean, some people might be concerned about, should we really be spending this money now? If the budget is okay and funded for this year, but we're not sure about next year, this seems like a good investment to make so that we have proper infrastructure in place to avoid surprise costs of having to treat our roads in the next couple of years when, there might be some insecurity in our funding. So I'm in support of this. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Moderator, if I could add one more thing to this, there
Yes,
has
go ahead, sir.
been interest from other towns to purchase some brine for us if we do get this capacity to manufacture ourselves. So there could be a revenue stream from it also.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's see who's up next is Robert Cohn.
Public Works, Mr. Chairman, Bob Cohn, Precinct 5. We have a trash truck that has to be repaired. May I ask how old that truck is?
Moderator?
Defer to Tom on that.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Two of the trucks that are in line for to be repaired. One of them is a 2003 Mack, which needs an engine, and there's another one, number 23, is a 2006 which we just did a transmission repair on. So these are large repairs that in the past I've tried to do them at the year end with the budget themselves, but as time passes and the budgets get tighter, there's not funding there to do these repairs at the end of the year. So what I've asked for is a small portion of money to actually make these repairs to extend the life of these vehicles.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
you got a 2003. Anyone that stays around and watches these trucks roll know that they never stop moving. There's all kinds of parts, hydro, the back, and everything. A 20-year-old rubbish truck takes a lot of beating, especially when they throw sofas in there, chairs in there. That's why the people always love Stoughton's Public Works Department. But there should be kind of a game plan when a truck is 2003 and 2006. And I don't know if the Public Works Chief has a plan, but some of these trucks got to start being repaired. I see these trucks every week, and I watch these trucks work, and I watch these young men that work so hard on these things, but sometimes the equipment breaks down. And one thing we buy Mack trucks, and believe me, they pay for themselves. But someone should be looking at not running a rubbish truck 22, 23 years old. It's starting to get into no matter how you do it. The fire engine goes 20 years. Rubbish truck probably works harder than the fire engine. So that's something that should be brought up and discussed about what's the value of these things. These things continually run 7, 8, sometimes 9 hours. And when you double up in a holiday, you have all of them out there. So I think that's a suggestion. Yes, $70,000 is cheap, but this is a 20-year-old truck, a 22-year-old truck. What else is going to go wrong? And those hydraulics aren't cheap to fix either. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And Mr. Cohn's right. That's exactly why we're looking at long-range capital planning. So we have a better plan on when to purchase trucks and a look at how we're handling trash in general. So,
Mr. Chairman, one more thing, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Moderator, you mean? I
Mr.
assume.
Moderator, well, it doesn't make any difference anyway.
Chairman of the board, that's okay.
The bottom line is that I forgot what I was going to say now. That's getting late. I should be in.
All right, you all wrapped up?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cohn.
do you want to say something about that?
Is he-
I think he's fine, but you could still.
John Anzavino, do you have a point of order? I just like to recognize your point of order if you have one.
I just had, it was just a point of information when Bill indicated the amount that would be borrowed.
Yes.
The number he gave, Bill, did that include the 16 that was coming from the old articles?
Bill Rowe?
Yeah, Mr. Anzavino's correct. Yeah, so that borrowing amount needs to be reduced by 74, 16.
Because Bill, I had the 782, 690, and 84 cents.
You're correct.
Would be the new borrowing.
You're correct, John. I had forgotten about that.
And then the 74, well, I didn't know if you just gave the total amount, because
I did.
74, 16 is from previous articles, which
Previous
still,
articles.
I don't know if that was left over that was already borrowed or not, so.
Yeah, that's correct. So the borrowing
All right.
amount would be,
Well, where Mr. Delinsky had asked for the numbers, I just wanted to make sure we had the right breakdown.
yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Anzavino. All right, next up is Mr. Jim Guerin.
Hi, this is Jim Guerin, Precinct 6. What happened to the funding in item 8C2, the brine machine? What happened to the funding that we appropriated 6 years ago?
Can anybody
Mr.
answer
Chair-
that?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Moderator, sorry.
Mr. Moderator, you can call me chairman if you want, but
That article was put forth by a previous superintendent. And we realized we couldn't get a full system for that. and the idea was to buy pieces of it. At the time, with the direction of the town manager, we discussed this. We had an agreement with a neighboring community to assist us in making the brine. They have a portable machine that they could bring to our site to make the brine. So we invested in some storage tanks so we could actually make it viable for us to store it and use it. And we purchased a spreader for this, so which could also be used as a material spreader. It's a combination spreader. So all the pieces that were purchased could be used for dual purposes within our fleet, with the idea and hope of coming back to complete the system. It worked great for a couple of years, and the community that we work with has expanded with, they partnered with someone else initially, and then they've expanded this at their capabilities and their use of it. So it's less available for us to get it through that agreement. And that's, I wish that we could have purchased a complete system back then. We didn't. We took steps to spend the money wisely to get us into the system, get us into the program, and here we are now. We just like to complete it and be done with it. No one's more frustrated than me that this was not purchased in 2015.
And the $70,000 includes the use of those previous purchased items?
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Guerin. Next up, John Azavino, did you have a question?
Oh, did you call me, Bob?
Yeah, John, I'm sorry. Did you have an actual question on this?
On the, no, I mean, my main concern with this was when the original article was passed, that's what people were expecting. And before they go and spend it on partial, you know, to me, that's when you should be coming back and saying, we actually need this for the whole thing. Because it's very misleading to town meeting. If you come in and say, I need X amount of dollars, and then you spend it, but you don't have the whole system done, you shouldn't have spent it. You should have come back, asked for the remainder or the extra you needed. And that's how town meetings should be looking at things. Otherwise, there's no credibility when people come looking for money. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Very quickly, Mr. Moderator, if I might. Mr. Anzavino, you're absolutely correct. And we are making a concerted effort now as we approach town meeting to look at those things in whole. It is frustrating to have to come back to you again. And we have another one on tonight about Glen Echo that, you know, asked for money so many years ago and then never did the project. So you're absolutely right. It's frustrating for you. It's frustrating for us. It takes up a lot of time and it really confuses people and it seems very disingenuous. But we are trying to correct that. And I assure you that's something we're looking at going forward. Ask for what we need. And if we need more, come back to you and just be as honest as we can. Thank you.
I always say.
Okay, next up is, thank you all. Next up is Joseph Piana. His hand's down. Okay, next, okay, he put his hand down. Next up, Paul Demuse.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are. Go ahead, Mr. Demuse. Precinct number, please.
Precinct 3, Paul Demuse. Through you, Mr. Moderator, I guess to Town Manager, I don't know if there's anyone here from the Fire Department. I have a question about this brush truck, utility brush truck. To my knowledge, we don't have one. And is this more of a wish list item or something to ride around in parades?
No. No, I'll defer to Chief Laracy. I believe he's on. I believe we had one, but I don't think it's operational anymore. I know Chief Laracy is on the meeting. It is a vehicle to be used, not just for pretty. And I think it has multiple uses. So Chief Laracy, I believe, is on. He can give you more specifics.
Mr. Moderator, through you.
Yes, go ahead.
We do have a brush truck. It's a 1991 utility vehicle. It wasn't purchased as a brush truck. It was purchased in made into a brush truck. It's coming on 30 years old this year, and we're looking to replace that, but we do have one.
And is it used frequently? Is it?
Well, it's used, but not frequently because we don't have a lot of brush fires, thank goodness. We do have a lot of open space in town, and we do have that potential.
Yeah, I just kind of have an issue with such a large item. To me, that should be a single item, should be an article on its own. These combined articles, I mean, I'm in favor of everything else for the fight. I'm pretty much in favor of everything here, but this one particular item to me should be a separate item. It's such a large borrowing too, and it's, like I said, it's not something we're gonna use that often.
Correct, and I tried to go for this vehicle through federal grant, FEMA grants, and unsuccessful because it's really, when they base on their grants on the amount of times it's used, the amount of incidents it responds to. Like I said, it doesn't go out a lot, but when we do need it, we need it because we only have one in town, and it needs to be operational.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Muse. Okay, Cynthia Walsh? Unmute yourself. Stand by, Cynthia. Someone's coming to help you.
IT, this is just an update from IT. I just had to make Cynthia a panelist. Now she should be able to talk.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia Walsh, Precinct 2. As I've said before, I live on a farm. In April, we had a brush fire, and the Stoughton truck couldn't make it out to the field. And Avon had to come in to the rescue so that the goats and the sheep weren't cooked. So obviously I support this, the brush truck.
That all, Cynthia?
Yeah, that's it. Just that when you need something like this, you need it.
All right, thank you very much, Cynthia. All right, that's it for everybody, I believe, that wants to speak. Ed Trumfield, as we take each department up, the vote on each department, can you read the Finance Committee report? We'll take up the Police Department first.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Okay, the police department, for the 3 vehicles and the one unmarked cruiser, we voted 14 to 1 to recommend to town meeting.
Thank you very much, Ed. All right. Yeah, we're gonna vote on each department separately. I believe the polls might be ready for that. Can we put the first poll up for the police department? All right, the poll is up. All those in favor, answer yes, no, or abstain. Please vote. Ten seconds. Can we end the poll? And provide the count? Thank you. Yes, 103, no, 15, and 2 abstentions. The police department part passes, as I just read the numbers. All right, next one is the fire department. Take down the poll. All right, the fire department, Ed Trumfield, can you read the Finance Committee report, please?
Yes, the finance committee voted 13 to 2 to recommend to town meeting.
Thank you, Ed. Can we put up the poll for this? The poll is in front of everybody. Please vote. 10 seconds, please. Please, in the poll and show the results. It's yes, 101, no, 18, 1 abstention. That motion passes for the fire department. On page 7, Public Works. Mr. Trumfield, can you read the Finance Committee's recommendations?
Yeah, I'll read them just as, real quick. The pickup truck, we voted 15-0 to not recommend. The salt brine, we voted 10-5 to recommend. The medium dump truck, we voted 13-2 to recommend. And the sanitation vehicle repairs, we voted 15-0 to recommend.
All right, thank you. Just 1 minute, please.
It's too much information.
Okay. Could you put up the poll, please, for the Department of Public Works, please? All right, Article 8, Capital Equipment Purchase, Public Works, all those, please vote accordingly. Ten seconds, please. Okay, can you end the poll and show the results? Okay, yes, 99, no, 16, abstentions, 2. That motion passes also.
Mr. Moderator,
Gene Fleming, I recognize you.
I move to adjourn the October 19th session of the special town meeting at 10:44 PM and the date.
The 21st, isn't it?
Yeah, and continue the meeting on May 21st.
No, October 21st,
October 21st.
7 p.m.
It's late.
That's all right. No, it's been a long night.
At 7 PM.
Okay, motion's made and
By
second.
remote. Let's just clarify by remote.
Okay. Could you-
By a virtual meeting.
Okay. Motion has been made by Gene Fleming and seconded by Christine Howe to continue the meeting to Wednesday, October 21st at 7 p.m. virtual format. Virtual meeting. All right, we're going to take a vote by raised hands. Can we clear the raised hand screen? And let me know when it's clear. All set. All those in favor, please raise your hand now. Ten seconds. All right, could I get a count, please? 107 yes. Can we clear the screen, please? Once if you can notify me when the screen is cleared. It's all set. All those no, please raise your hand. Ten seconds. Okay, if I could get a count, please? 5. 107 yes, 5 no. The motion passes to continue the meeting virtually to Wednesday night, 7 PM, October 21st.
Good night, everybody.
There'll be a new link tomorrow. So check your emails for Wednesday, Tuesday for Wednesday night's meeting. There'll be a new link that you have to click on. Thank you all for your participation this evening, and have a good evening.
Thank you all. Good night. Thanks,
Good
Bob.
night.